I think I got everything good to go.
So weird seeing NHL hockey on ESPN. So odd.
That time of year.
Yeah.
The only time of year, but I think we'll start with the play-in. We'll probably start in the East and get the Raptors discussion out of the way, and then we'll go from there.
It's time for agenda pushing weekly, baby. Let's go.
From the fake Raptor fan.
You know what? In my defense, I was on the rebuild train before everybody else was, and now everybody else is like, "Oh, we should push for a rebuild." So I'm gonna take my W.
Yeah, I don't know that people are though. That's the problem. Like people are just on the retool bandwagon.
I know you came around, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I came around, but I'm also resigned to the fact that we won't do it. So it is what it is. But we'll get into that momentarily here. I'll intro us.
All righty.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 3 Point Weekly. We have a lot to discuss on the last week of NBA basketball from the play-in tournament, from the end of Game 1s over Saturday and Sunday that saw a lot of road teams win that could set us up for some potential upsets that we'll have to discuss. But we're going to start in the play-in, and we're going to start in the Eastern Conference, starting off with the first matchup, that being the Toronto Raptors and the Chicago Bulls. Now, of course, we all know of the now very infamous collapse of the Toronto Raptors, how they blew in the fourth quarter, how they couldn't hit a free throw, and how Zach LaVine took over the game. But we're a little bit more focused on what's next for the Toronto Raptors here today. What happened in the game has been more than thoroughly discussed and memed on Twitter more than me and Gabe probably need to revisit at this point. But I will get your thoughts first, Gabe. As someone who has been talking about a potential Raptors rebuild for a while now and has been pushing for such a direction with the franchise, after being bounced in the play-in tournament with the impending free agency of potentially Fred VanVleet, potentially Gary Trent Jr., and Jakob Poeltl, what do you see fit as the plan for the Toronto Raptors in this upcoming offseason?
I've been a proponent for a long time. By a long time, probably like half a season. So nothing egregious, but it's time for the rebuild. You know, looking at just where this team has been, there's a clear ceiling in place. You just don't have a guy that is really going to get to that superstar level and be that number one on a contending team on this roster. But you do have a lot of solid pieces where if you keep a Scotty and maybe like one other guy, at least for now, and get rid of some of the others for some future assets, you could really build back even better because there's still a lot of talent on this roster. So they can go from where they're at now, and just making a few trades can really set themselves up to be good in, I don't know, 2-3 years. I don't even think it'd have to be like a long-term tankathon because we know the Raptors front office isn't too big on, oh, let's just be terrible. I think they could get to a point where it's like, hey, we still have some quality players, but we might hover around like a 12, 13 seed just because of how competitive the entire league is, but especially the Eastern Conference recently. I feel like they have a lot of flexibility in terms of mock-ups that you've seen for Pascal or OG or anybody else on the roster. A lot of opportunities there. It just kind of depends on whether or not they can commit to it because we've seen for years now they really don't like to make big changes. The one really big one was making that Kawhi trade and making that final push. And even that took probably the most embarrassing sweep in franchise history. So I don't know how motivated they're going to be to really do anything major just because of the fact of they can say, oh, we made the play-in, we got close to a postseason, and without a monumental collapse, we might have made it. If then Scotty will come back better in a year, we can re-sign our guys. Like, I don't know exactly how much they're going to look to do it, but they totally should go towards a rebuild, in my opinion.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Nah, I want to hear your thoughts, man. Take the floor.
I agree with you. I think a rebuild is the way to go. And this is what I tweeted out the other week. I said, this is probably the ideal scenario for the Raptors this offseason. You sign and trade Freddie, and Gary probably walks because he's going to have interest. And if you're going towards a rebuild, you probably don't keep Gary, even though he is one of the younger guys on this team. He probably doesn't quite fit the timeline. The one interesting thing I will say about the Gary Trent situation is part and due to the fact that he came off the bench at the end of the year, and part and due to the fact that he didn't play great to end the year, there is probably a scenario still now where Gary might actually opt into his player option, especially if they start moving off of guys so he can play up his value for next summer. So I don't think it's as much of a given now that he walked compared to a month ago, but we'll see how that remains. But whether he walks, whether he opts in, I don't think you re-sign him to a new deal this summer. And then Poto probably re-signs, drafted by the Raptors. Keeping him around isn't going to keep you as some great team. I think keeping him around at center makes sense regardless. But then OG and Siakam are the two big needle movers of this offseason. I think both of those guys should be moved off of. And then maybe you move off of Chris Boucher as well. He's probably a bench piece that some teams could like as anyone that's trying to make a playoff push. And then from there, it's just you have Scotty, you have Achua, you have whatever you get back for OG and Siakam, which you probably won't get some high-tier future star, but you should get a couple of young pieces that at least have relatively solid value that you can build around, whether you get a starter or a borderline star, someone you can develop. So, I mean, we were just talking about the Donovan Mitchell trade this offseason, this Colin Sexton being the guy, and Laurie sprung out of nowhere. So you never really know for sure until some of these guys get new opportunities what you get back. But those returns plus Scotty Barnes, like you said, Gabe, is enough that you probably don't have to be terrible for 4 or 5 years. You can probably be back in the mix within 2 to 3 years, which gives you enough time to have a couple of bad years in terms of draft selections to bring in some pretty good players. And the other thing to note here with the potential rebuild is, of course, some Raptors fans are concerned with the fact that we've now traded away our 2024 first-round pick, but also have contingencies on that for 2025 and 2026, which A, means the Raptors are really limited in what first-round picks they can trade away, which leads the best direction to be a rebuild because they don't really have the assets for a star trade this offseason because they can't trade the firsts. But secondly, if the Raptors are bad enough next year, that first-round pick is top 6 protected, and you are still going to have a really high selection anyways. So there's still an avenue where the Raptors can rebuild, and it's not for nothing because they don't have their own pick. So there's a little bit more flexibility there than I think some people might realize. Unfortunately, this plan probably means nothing. All odds are, as far as we know, with how Masai Ujiri typically runs any franchise, and especially since he's been with the Raptors, he's going to try and remain competitive. And that's probably not going to involve a star trade because they don't have the flexibility that they had last offseason, like they could have with the Scotty Barnes and a bunch of first-round picks type trade for KD. I just don't think that exists. And the Raptors have never been a free agency destination, nor are they going to have the cap space to make that type of signing. So I'd imagine it's just going to be a lot of the same again. Freddie probably comes back. Gary probably walks. Poto probably resigns. Siakam and OG probably stick around, and you just try and make a few moves around the fringes, which are going to be limited. And it's probably going to be more of the same in Toronto. Now, the only significant change might be Nick Nurse. It seems like there could be a mutual termination in the works over the next couple of weeks. All signs seem to be indicating to that, other than whatever comments we get from Ujiri if that changes in the next couple of weeks. But they should rebuild. I just don't think much is going to change in Toronto. I don't think Ujiri's the type of GM that wants to undertake a complete rebuild. I think he still believes enough in this group. And unfortunately, I think that just means Toronto are going to be doing more of the same next year, just maybe slightly better because they have Podol, but that's probably about it.
Yeah, that's the one thing that does worry me is just like Masai just seems like, he has a little too much pride to like really embrace a rebuild and has that delusion to where they think that they can stay somewhat competitive, which at this point, like when you look at the timelines of all the guys that are there, it would just make the most sense to just go ahead, hit the reset button, especially when you mention like the 2024 pick being top 6 protected. That would really incline, at least me as a fan, I would want to be as bad as possible so we could keep that pick. It would just make the most sense. And then you could really hit the rebuild with Scotty and whatever young pieces you get back in whatever trades for, Pascal. Maybe if you get something back in the signing trade, probably not something super valuable, but get something back for Freddie. And, getting that, top 6 pick if you are that bad, next season. I just feel like that would make the most sense to me. But I could just, like you said, I could just see Masai just having that thought like, we can just sign like a couple vets, bring some guys back, let Gary walk, and we'll still be somewhat okay. Like we'll have a chance to make the play-in, to make the playoffs. But that's just not good enough, man. I mean, you're just going to get yourself stuck into that. Just the place in basketball in the NBA where you don't want to be, where you have a bunch of guys on different timelines with no clear direction, and you're not good enough to win a championship or compete for a championship, but you're not bad enough to really, tank and get a top, 5 pick or whatever, top 3 pick. So you're just in that kind of purgatory range. I'm not saying they're there yet. I'm not stealing Gabe's word, but you could be pushing towards that if you don't start to make some clear moves to pick a direction soon. So that worries me, just seeing this from an outside perspective. But I do hope that Masai makes the right choices and is, very, transparent and is like, okay, we're probably not going to get much better with what we have, even if we bring most of these guys back and make a couple of moves. We're probably not going to get that much better, especially with the way the rest of the Eastern Conference looks. And just go ahead and embrace the rebuild, man. There's nothing wrong with a little rebuild. And like you guys both mentioned, they would put themselves in a position to where it won't be like a real like drought like how it was, back in like the mid 2000s, when, the Raptors will continuously out the playoffs. This will be more like maybe a couple, 2-3 years being, kind of bad. But then maybe by that 3rd or 4th year, we'll start to see those signs of becoming, back to being a good team again, as long as Scotty develops or whatever other young talent you bring in develops, So I feel like that would be the smart thing to do, but we'll just have to wait and see because I feel like with the Raptors, especially the last 2 or 3 years, it's all been just smoke and mirrors with OG rumors, whatever Pascal rumors come out, Freddie and stuff like that. So we'll really just have to wait and see if anything does happen. But like you said, Devin, I would not bank on, any major changes happening, even though it seems like that's the right way to go.
Yeah, I just think there's so many lines of thinking with the direction they end up going. But I feel like it could also make them stuck because you take that line of thinking of like, oh, a new coach could maybe make them better. And theoretically, yes, it could. I think if you bring in a more offensive-minded guy, the defense, I think they have the talent to have a solid defense regardless, especially as Nurse was more of a defensive-minded coach. It's not like they're losing that experience. And at the same time, it's just, Scotty can defend, OG can defend, Podol can defend. You just have guys that can do that. However, it's still not going to be good enough to put you over the top. And so you still would just end up stuck at like maybe a 6th, 5th seed if you're lucky and not even cracking that top 4 and just being a first round out. And so for a guy like me, especially as a fan, it's just like, if you're not first, you're last. If you're not contending for a title, what's the point? If you're not contending, you need to be getting better. You need to be young and ascending. You don't want to be not contending, but just where you are. And the problem is, if you move forward and just say, oh, we'll get a different coach, well, because so many guys' contracts are up now, if you run it back with the same roster, you think these guys are taking 1-year deals? I don't think these guys are taking 1-year deals. So if you don't let some of them walk now, either you're going to be trying to find your way into a million trades and probably have not much leverage because everybody knows things are going downhill. And so you just have like year 1 of a coach and all your guys are under contract for like 3 years. And it's like, oh, it's still not working that well. They're just stuck there. And then you just have like 2-3 more years of being whatever. And I don't think anybody wants that.
Yeah,
so you got to go for the rebuild.
another team that said, a new coach will just kind of fix things. The Portland Trailblazers, they said the same thing. They're like, all right, Terry Stotts, you've been here for like, almost a decade, but we'll just bring in Chauncey Billups and things will change. Things didn't change. Like, it's pretty much the same story, maybe worse, because the roster wasn't even as good. So, a new coach does not fix everything. A new coach might fix things if you're like how the Raptors were, the post, after the trading DeMar, it's like, okay, yeah, we got in Kawhi, but maybe we do need a new coach to, just kind of speak to these guys, bring in a new philosophy. That's when like having a new coach with a bunch of veteran players makes sense. But this is a team that is kind of stuck in that no man's land where it's like, yeah, last season you guys were 5th seed, but I think a lot of people can maybe agree a little bit of overachievement, like in that sense. I mean, the Nets had kind of like a turmoil-filled season where, Kyrie missed half of it due to the COVID stuff. Harden got traded at the deadline, so they were like a 7th seed, and that was crazy. And the Cavs really fell off, and then the Raptors were just solid enough to push themselves up to a 5th seed. So it's like, even though you guys were 5th seed last season, it's not like you guys were like a juggernaut 5th seed, by any sense of the mean. So, it would just make more sense to pick that direction and just hit the rebuild button, man. It just makes the most logical basketball sense to me.
Definitely makes the most sense, but they're definitely in danger here of being in the next Pacers in the East. They might just hang around the plane for the next few years, but hopefully at least a type of move gets made this offseason. And I don't think there'll be a full commitment of any direction either way, but even if they just start to get there, that would be positive if an OG gets moved off of or something of the sorts, because of course him and Siakam will be extension eligible this summer. So we'll see how that plays out. But the only thing that I think a new coach could help a little bit with in Toronto, and even still, like you guys said, it's not going to change things drastically, but Nurse is a great defensive mind and a great defensive coach. The problem is the way he has this Raptors defense playing, he plays them like a team that he can run 9 deep and he can use his bench frequently because it's such a high intensity and frantic style of defense. Yet he plays his starters 38 to 40 at night. And like, it just doesn't work. The guys get burnt out. And you saw it, especially with Siakam this year, you really saw it like for stretches of the second half of the year. Defense was not as good. Mid-ranger was just flat, didn't look as good. Like, they were just visibly tired. That's the one thing I think that could be improved by a new head coach, but I mean, it's not going to be enough for it to matter. Ultimately, unless this Raptors team gets depth or shooting, they're still just not going to be that great. And even if they do get depth or shooting, again, like you guys mentioned, they're probably a 5 or a 6 seed at best. So with Scotty in there, still young enough at the time that he can still fit the timeline, it makes sense to pick a direction now. And like you say, Gabe, not to give these guys some new contracts and then move off them in 2 or 3 years and then get the Scotties in like year 5, year 6, and then you're probably having to move off of him as part of this rebuild as well, which would be a real shame. So hopefully the decision gets made before it screws up the timeline with Scotty, so you don't miss out on the one time you actually got a top 4 pick throughout this run of not great but not bad years.
Exactly. I wish I had some trade articles, but I couldn't find any, that I trusted. So, we'll just have to save that for the off season, man. Hopefully we'll have some trades to talk about with the Toronto Raptors. Yeah. We thought we would at the deadline, but like Gabe said, it was more like them buying into trying to make the playoffs instead of, flaunting with a little rebuild or retool idea.
Yeah, I saw that mock trade that one of you guys sent earlier. I think it was Devin. Just with the Celtics get Pascal, like the Rockets get JB, and then the Raptors just get a bunch of assets. And I'm like, hey, you can draw that up and make it work as much as you want. It's not happening.
I feel like there was a Rockets fan that made that trade. I really do. They're just in love with this idea that Jaylen Brown's going to be a Houston Rocket, and I'm just like, no, it's not happening, man. I don't see it.
Yeah, I think there's a big expectation, or I should say more so a big hope amongst Rockets fans that this free agency, they're just going to go crazy, spend a ton of money, and actually be pretty good next year. And I don't see it. I don't see it. Like, whether it be Jaylen Brown, whether it be James Harden coming back, whether it be a big offer sheet for Cam Johnson. Like, I feel like they think they're getting someone pretty good. And I just don't get it. Like, especially the James Harden thing, because I know we're a bit off topic, but so be it. Like, it's a 33-year-old James Harden. Why is he going to go to a team that's literally been the worst team in the Western Conference for the last 3 years? It just doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make
Those
any
days
sense.
are over.
Plus, y'all's culture is fucking terrible, bro. Like nobody's gonna want to go there. Let's just be honest. Nobody's gonna want to go there.
No shot.
Everybody they got through trades. I don't
show some signs of life before you start trying to get like 3 all-stars and Wemby there, in one off season.
Yeah, they might get if they really want to throw some money around, they might get a high-end role player who thinks he can come in and then get a bigger contract in a couple of years' time, like a Jeremy Grant or a Kyle Kuzma type situation. But outside of that, I don't think they're getting anything better than that.
If they get Wemby, I'm sad, man. Like, I think him on the Spurs with their player development culture, like, would be great. I think him in Detroit with all their promising, like, young assets, I think that'd look great. Most of those bottom teams, I'm like, hey, I'm cool if he's there. Like, even in Charlotte, I think him and LaMelo could be like a cool one too. Like, there's a lot of really cool places for him to go. However, I just don't think Houston's one of them. With their culture and everything, maybe they bring in a new coach and it turns it around. And a year from now, we'll be talking differently. But until they figure that issue out, there's too much volatility there. I want to see Wemby somewhere I know is a little bit more secure.
Well, it's weird in Houston too, even regardless of the culture, because Sengun's their guy at center. They just took Jabari Smith. If you bring in Wemby, like, how does that work? Like, obviously you make it work. You don't not take Wemby if you get the number 1 overall pick, but either one of those guys is playing at the 3 or someone's coming off the bench. And that would be a really weird situation for them too. There's a lot of reasons to not want Wemby in Houston.
Yeah, they're one of the 3 teams that I pray don't get the first pick. Them, Portland, and Washington. Those are the 3 teams.
We've already had 2 moments of Portland slander from Tyrik, and we've been recording for a little over 20 minutes.
I'm still kind of got a bad taste in my mouth from last week, man. But we're not going to talk seriously about Portland.
No, that's we got to wait until at the absolute earliest the draft lottery, but probably later to have a real discussion about Portland. Let's move over to the West, though. I don't think much else needs to be said about the East play-in. The Bulls crashed out. The Hawks and the Heat we'll get to momentarily when we talk about their first-round series. But let's move on to the Western Conference play-in. What stood out the most to you, Tyrik, through the play-in tournament in the Western Conference?
I think I'll go with OKC. They really impressed me because I don't think any of us picked them to beat New Orleans. But they went into New Orleans and really controlled that game, man. I was very impressed. And it wasn't even like Shea carrying the load because Giddey had a very good game. Lou Dort was solid, especially in that first half. He really performed very well. And they're just a team that I would say maybe a little bit ahead of their, timeline. They only started this rebuild after the bubble. So, I mean, people might think it's been kind of a long time, but it really hasn't been that long, of a, real rebuild. So, I'm just very impressed, and I just can't wait to see them fully healthy next season. Chet, his rookie year, see maybe if they make any type of, small moves in the offseason, and just players continue to develop, man. I'm just that's just a team that I think our opinions have really shifted over the course of this season because we were kind of looking at them they have one more year to be bad, but they weren't bad this season. They were a game out of the playoffs, and they just ran into the Timberwolves who really needed that win, probably more than anybody. So, but still very impressive OKC, man, and that's a very successful season in my book.
Yeah, man. Overall, it was a fun couple of games. I'll start first with just Thunder talk because that's where you started off. That game versus the Pelicans, I'm really not mad at the Pels for losing. When you're talking about a 9-10 matchup in the play-in where it's win or go home, I mean, at that point, when those teams are so close, it's just some player is going to have a big night, and that team is going to win. And for OKC, I mean, obviously Shea had a big night because he's their star player, but at the same time, you had Giddey and Dort play like that. I mean, if you're the Pelicans, like you had some solid production from some guys, but the better team just on that day was the one who took it. And it just happens to be the volatility of the play-in. And so they go from there. But then that second game, the Timberwolves, they needed to win it more. But just from an actual on-court perspective, the Timberwolves front court was going to eat OKC alive. They had Gobert back. They had Cat in there. Like that duo, and then OKC's biggest rotational player being like Jalen Williams, it was just a matchup that looked really bad for them. And really either way, OKC was kind of screwed because if it wasn't the Timberwolves, it was the Lakers. So because of those front court situations, like I just did not expect OKC to get in regardless. But what they showed was really good flashes. And I think it's a good sight to see because next year you have Chet coming in and you can even add on to that as well. So there's so much to grow from there and a lot of good things seen. I think it was just a fun time to watch, man. That's really my biggest takeaway. The winner go home. It showed me that the play-in is really a success. This was probably the best year of it so far. Not a ton of blowouts, just a lot of really good close games, high-level clutch basketball being played. This was the first year where I'm like, okay, this really showed its worth.
Yeah, the only game that wasn't decided by 11 points or less was that Timberwolves Thunder game. And like you said, that was always going to be a tough matchup for OKC. Cat and Gobert just dominated inside throughout that entire game. They dominated OKC in terms of paint scoring. And SGA and Giddey just struggled a little bit more, and there's nothing wrong with that. They got their young guys 2 games of postseason basketball before heading into the next year. And like you said, Chet's going to be back next year. Maybe they bring in a backup big as well so they can have a little bit more size heading into next season because this team has a really good outlook moving forward. And you bring in Chet next year with how good SGA and Giddey and J-Dub were this year. Going to add another lottery selection this year. They have 10 first-round picks through the next 3 drafts, so you know there's going to be a trade sometime in the next 12 to 18 months to bring in somebody of some caliber. So this is going to be a really fun scene to watch next year, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if this time next year we're talking about them hosting Game 1 of the first round of the Western Conference playoffs. That's the type of upside they have even in the short term. But yeah, Thunder played great. Not that I want to be too harsh on a 9-10 play-in matchup, but I don't love that the Pelicans crashed out the way they did. I mean, they had 20 from Trey Murphy, 20 from Herb Jones, 30 from Brandon Ingram, and they still lost. That's the type of game that you need to be winning at home as a team who has a playoff series under their belt against a very young team. They just didn't show up on the defensive end enough. CJ didn't show up at all on offense, and he's kind of the guy that they've brought in to help BI, and he just wasn't there. And that's going to happen in single-game matchups in a winner-go-home situation. But it's tough for a team that started off the year so well. Of course, Zion not being there is the biggest reason that they're going to struggle, but it was tough to see them bounce out the way they did. But they just got to hope they can be healthy next year and run it back with another year that CJ is still on the roster and have some more internal improvement from some of their guys like Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, who really played well down the stretch. But it's tough to see them go out that way, but full credit to OKC. They were the better team on the day.
It's crazy because I think we all had them as a top 4 seed hosting a first-round series. So it just shows you how crazy it is, man. But back to CJ, because that's my guy. Love CJ. That's one of my favorite players. He has to be better. Like, he played like trash. He's got to be better, man. At least be a little more efficient than what he was. I mean, I don't remember his numbers, but I know that they were very bad shooting. So he has to be a lot better than that, especially when you got the production from everybody else that you did. Brandon Ingram carried the load. He just had to really just show up in a little way. Like, didn't he have to be amazing, but he was bad. And I also don't like his comments after the game, even though he didn't mention any names. It was very specific what he was talking about. He was talking about Zion. That's something that you don't say to the public. You don't say it to the media. You keep that shit in-house. That's all I got to say. I just didn't like that from CJ.
Yeah, I honestly am not too familiar with, like, the comments after the game. I don't think I saw that anywhere on my timeline.
Basically, he said, I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the quote in front of me, but he basically was saying, like, guys got to be in shape, guys got to be available. Something around that kind of tone. That's pretty much what he was trying to say.
That's
he did not say any names, but we know who he was talking about.
You said that was CJ that said that?
Yeah,
CJ said that.
the quote was availability important, man. We've got to be available. We've got to do what we need to do off the court in terms of nutrition, in terms of getting the right sleep, the right type of hydration, having the right type of diet. Everything has to matter for us, everybody 1 through 15.
Yeah, I can see why CJ would be frustrated because Zion's pretty much been out the whole time CJ's been there. But yeah, like you said, you got to handle that internally. It's just a bad media look. Overall, with while we're on the Zion thing though, that's kind of the main reasons why I'm not too mad that they lost this game. Because when I think of what does it really do for them, saying, oh, the fact that they were able to get it done without Zion, they did it before, and not saying that's super sustainable and you can't hold on to something that happened by the time next playoffs come around. That'll be 2 years ago. It's not like you can hold on to that forever. But at the same time, if this team wants to win at a high level, this isn't the team they're winning with. They're playing with this roster plus a 27 points per game, super efficient, superstar potential power forward. And so when you look at it, it's just how much does this really matter? Because we know Brandon Ingram can play well. We know Trey Murphy and Herb Jones are on the rise, and they're probably only going to get better. CJ might regress a little bit, but, I mean, the ascension of, Trey and Herb might outweigh that. So at that point, how much does it really matter? For me, it's just this construction and this dynamic is not going to be what leads to the promised land. It's going to be a roster with Zion. And if it's not, you're going to have to look to make some major roster reconstruction because that's what you're built for. You are built for a Zion-led team to take you far, and Zion was doing that when he was playing. So, I mean, from a neutral fan, I think looking at OKC versus them, OKC getting that win, it's okay, this is a good sign, our first taste of winning a big game that'll take us into next year. For the Pelicans, it really doesn't matter to me at all because this isn't the core they need to be winning with.
Yeah, makes sense. We all just want to see Zion healthy, so I understand CJ's frustrations, but I would just like to see a veteran, president of the NBA Players Association be a little more of a leader, not call his guys out in front of the media. That's just me personally, but yeah, that's all I gotta say, man.
Yeah, especially when you consider the type of role that CJ has amongst the league, you would hope for a little bit better, but it is what it is. That'll be all we really have to say about the Pels until we get to the meat of the offseason in a couple months. But let's move off of the play-in tournament. We're recording this on the night just after the 76ers and the Nets have finished game 2, and while the Warriors and Sacramento Kings are enjoying their game 2 in Sacramento. So let's start with the series that has 2 games completed in the 76ers and the Nets series. Widely considered one of the least competitive first-round series of the playoffs, and so far it has been that. 76ers are up 2-0. And other than the Nets making a bit of a run early in the fourth in game 2, has been a relatively comfortable series so far from the 76ers. What have your thoughts been so far from this series, Gabe, to start off through the 2 games in Philly?
I predicted a sweep, and I think it's going to be a sweep still. So I'm not really surprised or shocked or really taken aback by much of anything that's happened. Looking at game 2, it's pretty much what I expected. The Sixers controlled the boards, and overall they just had more talent. Big game from Tyrese Maxey, good game from Tobias. James Harden didn't even really have to score, but I mean, Embiid put up almost a 20-20 game. They just kind of did what they were expected to. Tyrese Maxey was really good in the first round last year, looking to repeat that. They just have more firepower, and a Nets team that's really only this high of a seed because of a lot of their success during the first half of the season before they made the trades. I didn't really take them seriously going into the playoffs. I think there's some upside there with Mikal and a lot of the other pieces they have that they can just flip for different things or could have potential to get better in the future. But just from the big picture, you look at this Philly roster and you look at this Brooklyn roster, and I don't think anybody thought Brooklyn had a chance to win. And so them going out, it is what it is. Now, they say no series starts until a road team wins. So theoretically, Brooklyn still has a shot. I think if they go down 3-0, it's definitely over. It's always over. That's never been something that's been came back from. Philly almost got towards that point last year, but I don't think that'll happen again. Game 3 is their last shot, and maybe they'll prove me wrong and take a game, but I think it was over before it got started.
I love that saying. The series will start in Game 3 when Philly probably wins that game. Yeah, there's not really too much to say. I mean, they switched their coverage in Game 2. They went small, a lot more. Claxton only played like 20 minutes. And double Embiid a lot. Dare everybody else to beat you. And in Game 2, I mean, role players tend to play better at home. That's pretty much what happened. You know, you got a good game, a great game from Maxey, a good game from Tobias Harris. You know, so it's like when those guys are scoring over 50 points combined, it's kind of like, you know, tough for Brooklyn to really, you know, have a chance to win that game. I like the guts though, you know, doubling Embiid and letting everybody else beat you, but you know, it's a strategy that didn't work well tonight. We'll see what adjustments they make moving to Brooklyn, but we all knew Brooklyn was just a little too overmatched with this matchup, man. Like out of like all the 3-6 matchups that I can remember, this is probably one of the more just lopsided ones when it comes to just talent on both sides and just, you know, you got the MVP of the league on one team and then the other team doesn't really have an all-star. You know, Mikal's been playing like it, but, you know, him, first playoff series being the number one option. Like Gabe said, nobody really thought Brooklyn had a chance, so it's not really surprising that the first 2 games have gone the way that they have.
Yeah, definitely not. And like you say, it's a very lopsided 3v6 matchup, but we've never really had any team like the Brooklyn Nets over the last couple of years where they just decide to trade their stars mid-season whilst having a really good season. So everything about this Nets situation is really unprecedented. As far as the Nets go, I will say Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson have been playing relatively well and at least keeping them afloat. Mikal Bridges, especially in Game 1, and Cam Johnson, especially in Game 2. And like you guys mentioned, they had to decide, do we let the number 1 3-point shooting team in the league by percentage try and beat us that way, or do we let arguably the most dominant paint scorer in the league try and beat us? And they decided that they weren't going to be beating the paint. They were going to be beat by the 3-ball. And even tonight, where Philly only shot 31% from 3, they still win relatively comfortably. Largely thanks to Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris shooting the ball really well. And Embiid's only taken 26 shots through the first 2 games, but he's still doing his thing on the glass. He's still defending well. And Philly's shooting well enough to win fairly comfortably. So maybe the Nets will be able to take a game at home if Philly has another rough shooting night, which could be a little bit more likely on the road. But even on the road, if you're not winning a game where Philly's shooting 31% from 3 and Embiid is taking 11 shots, probably not a good sign for you moving forward.
I wonder who's the last team, or if there's ever been a team to get swept back-to-back years in the first round. Because that's the territory that Brooklyn. I can't think of one off the top of my head unless maybe like, I don't know if Detroit like mid-2010s was making the playoffs back-to-back years because they were kind of like a fringe playoff team, but you know, I don't remember the last time if that's happened in our lifetime. So, you know, just
it's possible. I feel like
Pistons would be, I think, 18, 19, and 15, 16. Because they haven't won a playoff game since the mid-2000s, but they were in the playoffs twice during the 2010s.
Okay. We're going to see is ESPN stat. First team since the 84, 85, somebody to get swept back-to-back years in the first round.
I can tell you the last team to get swept back-to-back in the second round. That would be the 2017 and 2018 Toronto Raptors.
The Raptors got swept. Must have played LeBron again.
2 years ago. It was 2016 went 6, 2017 and 18 were both.
In y'all's defense, that 2017 Cavs team was really, really good. Like that was a very, very good basketball team.
They were great. I'm not really too mad about that sweep when it happened. I'm just like, you know, they're a great team. They kind of bullied their way through the whole conference and only just went up against the Warriors. 2018, like
we got a game.
The Pacers took them to 7. The Celtics took them to 7. Like,
and then in the middle,
couldn't win one
series.
Yeah. Hey, yeah. Just to kind of close on Philly though, I wanna go back to like Devin's point where he said, yeah, they can either beat us by shooting or they can beat us in the paint, and they chose beat us by shooting. Points in the paint tonight was 46-20 in favor of Philly. If that doesn't tell you it's over, like if your goal is saying you're not going to beat us in the paint, and they have almost like 2.5 times your points in the paint, you're not defending nothing. You're not defending anything.
It kind of makes sense though, because Embiid's still going to get his at some capacity. Harden is more of a slasher, and even though he played bad, but Maxey isn't just a shooter. He gets to the bucket, as maybe efficiently as any guard with his size and stature. So it kind of makes sense. And Brooklyn is a jump shooting team, with Mikal, with Cam, Dinwiddie, Seth Curry. Like they're just a bunch of like shooters, guys that are either taking threes or one dribble pull up guys, or Mikal can create a little more off the dribble, than some other guys, but. Kind of makes sense, but that is a very like glaring disparity in paint points. So it's like if your goal is to kind of limit, Embiid in the paint, and you're still getting dominated, something might have to change. Maybe give Nick Claxton more minutes would help, I would say.
Yeah, seeing Nick Claxton with so few minutes in game 2 was definitely an interesting decision, to say the least, for a team that already lacks size and going up against the MVP and Joel Embiid, but. Jacques Vaughn gets paid a lot more money to make those decisions than I do, so I'll leave that up to him. We'll move on to another series that, at least off of game 1, looks like it could be a little bit comfortable for the higher seed in the Eastern Conference, that being the Boston Celtics against the Atlanta Hawks. Relatively comfortable game for Boston, had about a 30-point lead at half after a very good 3-point shooting first half and a very rough shooting game from the Hawks. But we'll get your thoughts first, Tyrik, as the Celtics fan of the group, what you saw from your Celtics in game 1 against Atlanta.
Kind of what I expected. I mean, these two teams don't really compare, especially just the way, like, how inconsistent the Hawks are, it's kind of expected. But I was talking to my pops earlier, and I was just saying, like, man, I'm excited, like, because we didn't get this version of Derek White in the playoffs, and even in his best games, like, he wasn't near, as impactful as he was in game 1. And it took him a while to even have a game close to this last season. I think I might have mentioned this before, but just having him, and then even like Brogdon didn't play good. Those are two guys that are just added, pretty much rotational players, because like I said, Derek White wasn't that great in the postseason last year. And just, having that guard playing, just guys that you can throw at Trae Young. You got 3 like really, really high level defensive guards in my book. Brogdon, Marcus Smart, of course, winning Defensive Player of the Year last season. And Derek White's been a All-NBA caliber defender this season, in my opinion, too. So it's like you got guys that you can throw at these, top-level guards. So it's just very exciting to see, because we didn't really have that luxury last season. And it's good to see Tatum, playing a little better. Jaylen Brown, even though his hand is still kind of messed up, had a really good game. And Rob Williams being back is very key. Atlanta's just overmatched. I might be surprised if they get a game. I think they might have already won their game, which was that play-in matchup. So, it's very tough for them. It's a tough matchup. I was so confused, though. Like, Quinn Snyder, for some reason, sub Trae Young back in with like 2.5 minutes. They were down like 15 points. Like, it's like this game's pretty much over. Sub Trae Young in, I didn't understand that. Like, why are your starters still in the game? Didn't really make sense to me. But yeah, I would be surprised if Atlanta does get a game, because I just feel like Boston is probably the worst matchup that they could have pulled in the first round, because they have not played good against them all season long.
Yeah. Looking at this series, the Hawks kind of already proved me wrong in the play-in. I thought they were going to fall out of the playoffs entirely. I didn't have them taking either game, and they beat the brakes off of Miami in that 7-8 matchup. It just thorough outplaying. I mean, you had Clint Capella out there looking like the best board man you've ever seen in your life. And when Bam Adebayo's on the other team, it's like that's some pretty impressive stuff. The Hawks held Jimmy to playing really terrible in that game. Like, it just seemed like everything went right for them on that night. Going into a matchup against the Celtics, originally I had the Celtics sweeping the Heat. So put the Hawks in that place, who I kind of judged a little bit worse than the Heat. I definitely expected this to be a sweep as well. Obviously, no official prediction here because we didn't have them there in our predictions video. But if I gave a prediction here, it would have been a sweep. And so the fact that they came in and they lost this game, like, I get it. The only thing that was honestly surprising was that the Celtics starters got as many minutes as they did. I'm surprised they didn't go to garbage time and they were out even earlier. But, I mean, if this series is over in 4 games, I think they'll have some good time to rest.
Yeah, definitely. That was a bit surprising, but I mean, this game was over at half. I mean, the Hawks made it closer down the stretch, but it was never really in doubt. The Celtics just had such a dominant half. I mean, they shot 39% from 3 on the game, but it was well over 50% at half. And everything was just clicking. The ball movement was good. The threes were hitting. The defense was good, especially in transition. There's a couple of really good transition defense plays. White and Smart were playing really good help defense in the paint. Robert Williams looked really good off the bench on both sides of the floor. It was just clicking really well. The one positive note I can give on the Hawks, or the couple of positive notes I guess I can give on the Hawks, is they only shot 17% from 3. And I doubt they're going to shoot that bad as a collective again. They didn't get anything from their bench at all until like Sadiq Bey hit a 3 in the third. Bogdanovic hit a couple threes in the fourth. If they can get a little bit better shooting, at least early, they can at least think that they have a bit more of a chance. So they can stay in a couple more games, which I'd imagine they will. I don't expect them to shoot the lights out of any game, especially on the road, but 17% is probably not something they're going to replicate. And I'd imagine that at least from their bench, they'll get a little bit more production. The other positive was DeJounte Murray looked really good getting to the rim. He provided a lot of really good rim pressure. He finished quite well at the rim. Struggled from the perimeter, but he looked really good at his ability at being able to get to the rim. If he can start playmaking from that and they can finally start hitting some threes, they might be able to get something out of that. But guys got to hit some threes for that to matter. The other thing I want to mention from the Hawks standpoint is they need to try and find some ways to actually allow Okongwu to have some level of defensive impact. They probably need to match a lot of his minutes with when Robert Williams is on the floor, because whenever Okongwu was on Horford, he was just a non-factor defensively because he had to respect Horford's three-point shooting, and Okongwu was just not providing his elite defense in the paint that he normally would. And that's not anything against Okongwu. It's just the fact that he couldn't be in the paint. And that was a big reason why the Celtics were able to have such success with dribble penetration and getting open threes off of it. There just wasn't that presence. And Capella wasn't really at his finest. So there wasn't much of a threat when he was in there. And Okongwu wasn't able to be a threat for much of the game because he was in there often enough when Horford was on the court, or at least Horford and Williams were on the court. So that's something that the Hawks are going to have to try and figure out and try and match some minutes with. But overall, the Celtics look like the better team, but the Hawks still might have a chance to get a game at home if they can figure out how to shoot some threes and Trae Young can figure out how to score for at least a game.
Yeah, y'all know what I like to say, man. Trae Young can get you a game. He can get you a game. But really for them, like you said, got to shoot better. And I think DeJounte has to keep playing like how he was, getting to the basket, maybe hit a little more from the perimeter, because I think Boston will be pretty locked in on Trae Young, trying to stop him from impacting the game as much as we know he can. So other guys are going to have to step up if they're going to have any chance in the series. But, I don't really see that happening. I see really this series for Boston and Philly series as well being like them just kind of getting warmed up, trying some different coverages, some different lineups, seeing, okay, what can work against this team in the second round that we're going to see, because that's going to be, a big time matchup. And the winner of that will probably maybe play Milwaukee. Hopefully Giannis is cool. But yeah, so, we'll see. We'll definitely see.
Did Trae Young even get a game off the Heat last year? Did that go far?
He hit a game winner in game 3, I think.
See, I just remember that series being like the Heat putting Trae Young in hell for a series.
But so, Trae can still get a game even in hell. Man.
I guess that's fair. You're proving you're proving yourself right with that, proving me wrong, because I really put no faith into them. I think like the whole point about Al Horford taking his center out of the paint and just preventing that paint defense from being played and giving the other guys in the Celtics just good lanes to get to the rim, it just shows the depth of the Celtics, man. Like, at least their top 7 is probably the best top 7 in basketball without thinking too deep into it. I mean, the fact that you have Time Lord off the bench, only playing 20 minutes, and he was like the leader for Defensive Player of the Year in the last 2 weeks last year. I mean, that's impressive rotations to have. The fact that you don't even have to play him, but you could put him in on a moment's notice, and it just completely just changes the dynamic of how they can play. It goes so far in how they can just prepare for different matchups. So in this sense, it's like, hey, we want to get that big man out of the paint. Let's just have all shooters on the court.
Yeah.
And if Derek White's going to play like that, it's going to be even better because if he can play close to what he did, I think it was game 1 of the finals last year, that Al Horford game. It was also, I think it was the same game where Derek White was just making like everything. And I was just sitting watching just like, who is this man? There was some game last year where he was just making the most absurd, like into the shot clock type shots.
You might be thinking of game 6 against Miami, but he might have had a game in the finals too. It might have been game 1. But I remember game 6 against Miami when Jimmy had that crazy game. Derek White tried his best to end that series. And I was saying the same thing, like where is this coming from? He's been I feel like I didn't see Derek White hit a jump shot his entire time he got traded until that game. Like he was so bad offensively. I was so shocked that he was that poor. And then flip it to this season where it's like, I remember first half of the season, he was shooting the skin off the ball, and he's been pretty consistent all year long. So that's why I'm just like so excited that, you know, not only did we broad him, but he's really played so well this season. And it's kind of gone under the radar just how well he's been for us. And I think like he's gotten his confidence up playing in the starting lineup too. And that's why bringing Rob Williams off the bench doesn't really like impact him as much because Rob Williams is going to do what he does. But you get Derek White to have, you know, those games where he can, you know, really pop off and really play well offensively and defensively. So, you know, we might see Rob Will continue to come off the bench. And I don't have a problem with that at all because he's going to do exactly what he does. No matter if he's starting next to Horford, coming off the bench, playing by himself, like it doesn't really matter for him.
Yeah, I think I like the Robert Williams minutes off the bench. I think his defensive impact is nice coming in. And when Horford's off, I like his lob threat. I like some of the playmaking opportunities he's getting as well. And Derek White game 6 against Miami and game 1 against Golden State. Both were his 20-point games in the playoffs last year. He was 4-7 from deep in that game 6 game against Miami, and he was 5 of 8 from deep in the first game of the finals. And now he's already got a 24-point game, which would have been a playoff high for him last year, shooting 4-7 from deep against Atlanta. So that just goes to show the improvements from him this year, no doubt.
Yep. Couple quick notes. I don't expect Sam Hauser to get so many more playoff minutes going forward. He was playing a lot of first half minutes when the game was still kind of close. I'm like, I don't know if I like Sam. He can shoot, but I'm just like, when it gets to the nitty gritty playoff series, he's probably not going to see rotation. So you might as well get used to that now.
Yeah, probably. I don't mind him getting a few minutes in this series just to take a few minutes off the guys because, like you alluded to, Gabe, earlier, like Tatum played 40 minutes in that game, which is probably 10 more than he should have. But, I don't mind it in this series, especially while you're at home and you probably have a little bit more of a lead on things. But there's definitely an argument to start getting used to that tight 7-man rotation. Yeah,
like if they can start pulling away early the next game, I think they should be playing more guys. Like, if you're up 30 at halftime, why did only 8 guys play in this game? I feel like that's a little bit low. They could have definitely gotten a little bit more rest. The final score makes it look like they kind of brought it back, but I don't think the game was ever really in question. Like you guys mentioned earlier, the late Trae Young sub-in was just weird. So it should have been it should have been just deep in the rotation guys in early because you're in a 2-7 and assuming that they play Philly in the second round and Philly also gets it done in 4 or 5 games. I know I said earlier they're playing high minutes now, maybe they can get some rest before the next series. I don't know if they can because if Philly gets it done early, traditionally the past couple of years at least, they just start the second round matchup right away once both teams are ready. They don't wait for every first round matchup to be done. I think last year there was second round matchups in game 2 or 3, and there was a game 7 of the first round being played the same time. They just go.
I don't think it was that crazy, but yeah, they do. They'll start a game. They'll start a game 1, and then it's Oh yeah, Game 7 at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Like I think they did that last season, but Game 3, nah, they don't do that.
I don't think it's game. Maybe a game two. A game two.
I
Did I
remember a
say
Game
game
1.
three?
I remember a Game 1. I don't remember a Game 2. That seems a bit egregious.
I'll have to
That
look at
is-
last year's playoff bracket. I
Or
don't
maybe
know.
like Game 2 was like the day after Game 7 or something like that. I don't know.
End point being, Boston should not play with their food and should make sure this gets done with because Philly very well might do the same thing.
Yes, get as much rest as possible, man. Malik Monk is still tearing these boys up, man.
Malik Monk, do you know how to tear those guys up? We'll definitely be discussing Malik Monk more momentarily as we work our way through the series here. Let's discuss the most interesting first round matchup in the Eastern Conference, the series that has already got started because a road team has already won. And that would be the Knicks beating on the Cavs in game one. And it kind of went as expected. The Knicks were the better team on the glass. The Knicks out rebounded the Cavs, and the Cavs didn't shoot very well from three, whilst the Knicks bench played very well. I'll get your thoughts first, Tyrik, on a series that we all had the Cavs winning in, not overly comfortably. I believe we had it all in 6 and 7, but a series we all believed the Cavs would win, but the Knicks get the early lead in game one.
I think all of the questions I kind of had, like with the Cavs offense in late games and their defense in late games, was kind of like, valid questions, valid concerns, and I think we saw that in game one. Brunson down the stretch, does what he's been doing all year long, is like really being able to, win the next games and really control games down the stretch. The one thing, and my dad actually brought this to my attention, the Cavs front, even though they play with two bigs, it's kind of like the bigs that with Randall and Mitchell Robinson, very physical, especially Julius Randle, a very physical guy. They're going to have their hands full, with those matchups. So I'm just interested to see, what kind of rotations they decide to run. Being able to hit the 3-point shot, Okoro, we talked about him. He could be the X factor in this series for the Cavs. I seen a lot of times he wasn't confident, just sitting there knocking down the shot, was really trying to, guys weren't really fully closing out, and he was just, still using the exit dribble trying to get to the basket. He has to be a threat from downtown because, if they can't keep up with the Knicks and their shooters, it's going to be a very tough series, very tough series. But it's just one game. We know that these teams match up very well, and I'm expecting Cleveland to bounce back for sure. This is going to be a very long series, I think. I still stand by that. But the Knicks being able to win that game one, I didn't really expect them to go in and win game one in Cleveland. That kind of surprised me a little bit. So a very good win by the Knicks. We'll see how the Cavs respond. But I still got those questions, man, about the Cavs offense down the stretch and their defense, man, because Garland and Mitchell, I will stand on that, can continue to get headhunted down the stretch of games. That's not something that's going to go away anytime soon.
Hey, man, I want to make one main point on this game one, and that's that sometimes the smaller trades pay off in big ways because looking down every stat from this game, field goal percentage pretty close, 3-point shooting pretty close, free throw differential pretty close. That big difference is the rebound differential. And who did they bring in at the trade deadline? You got to give a huge shout out to Josh Hart here because this man came in third leading scorer on the team and put up a double-double with the rebounds. That unique skill set. The rebounds were the difference in the game. They won by 4 points, and they won the rebounding battle by 12? I mean, that's a big deal. You got one of the best rebounders at that position. And now it's like, oh, this random guy they picked up as a role player and is coming off the bench for them. Like, he was the difference maker, and he took a game on the road. Now if they can just protect MSG, like, they have a real shot of winning this series. So it's just a reminder to see that, like, not every trade that puts a team on another level needs to be that star player trade.
Yeah, definitely. Josh Hart was great game one. Class great. Shot the ball well. Had big pull-up three late in the fourth to push them a little bit further ahead. And this was a game where, even though the bench did play relatively well, and especially Josh Hart had a really good game, like Emmanuel quickly didn't shoot the ball well. Quentin Grimes didn't do much for them offensively. RJ Barrett had a really rough shooting night. So if you're a Knicks fan and you're worried about the fact that Cleveland didn't play that great and he barely won, you had a lot of key guys for you to not play that great offensively either. So there's still room for them to grow on that end. But like you mentioned, the rebounding battle was significant. I think as an NBA collective, me included in this, we all forget how good of a rebounder Julius Randle is. I mean, he's a big, strong physical presence, but like he's legitimately one of the best rebounders in the league. Not at his position, not power forward, just one of the best rebounders in the league. He's consistently around 10 a night, and he just dominated that matchup with Mobley. He was the better player on the defensive end when he was matched up with him. He was better on the offensive end. He was better on the glass. He was just dominant in that matchup. And he shot the ball really well early on. He was a little bit cold midway through, but finished it off well in the fourth with a couple of good buckets. And of course, Brunson did his thing. He had a really quiet 27 until he had a few in the fourth, but he was just consistently well throughout. And as long as this Knicks bench continues to do their thing and this Knicks team continues to hit the glass, which with the personnel they have, they should, they're going to be in a good spot here. And the Cavs are still nowhere near out of it. I mean, Okoro shot 1 of 6 and Mobley shot 4 of 13. Those are the types of guys, like you mentioned, Tyrik, especially with Okoro, needs to start hitting his shots because otherwise they're going to have to start relying a lot more on Cedi Osman. And when that's the case, as we saw in the fourth quarter, Jalen Brunson is just going to win that matchup on the offensive end. I mean, Cedi competed, but Brunson is going to beat Cedi Osman every time. Cedi is just not a good enough defender for that. Okoro is, but he needs to feel confident shooting the three because within a couple of missed threes in the first quarter, right away, he already had lost confidence and he was just taking everything to the hoop and just trying to dish it off. He lost confidence instantly. Karis LeVert needs to shoot the ball better. Well, that's another thing, but LeVert being streaky in the playoffs just seems to be something we need to accept at this point. That's just something we get from LeVert. It was no different last year in the play-in with the Cavs. He was someone who was going to have a big game alongside Garland, and Garland did not get that help. So Donovan Mitchell did what he could. He played great on the offensive end, and even though he didn't get picked on at times defensively, he did also force some big turnovers down the stretch, which I'll give him credit for. But Mitchell needs a little bit more help, and Okoro needs to be a part of that. Mobley needs to be a part of that. LeVert needs to be a part of that. And hopefully Garland gets a little bit more opportunities too, because he didn't play bad in game one, but I just felt like he was just kind of there for most of the game, and he just felt like he was another role player. I didn't really feel like this was another borderline all-star caliber guy on the Cavs who was going to potentially take over the game at stretches. He just very much felt like he was there, which they need a little bit more from if they're going to get past this Knicks team.
Yeah, first quarter, Garland, at least from watching, just like numbers aside, I feel like he was playing good. He looked confident, like he was, getting his own shot, playmaking really well, getting guys open shots. And then it just seemed like the rest of the game, he was, like you said, he was just kind of like there. He just kind of faded to the back a little bit. He has to kind of demand that same attention, especially if, you're not going to get great games from, Okoro shooting the ball, or if Mobley doesn't pick it up, because that's possible because, like you said, he's dealing with a bull in a china shop in Julius Randle. And that is a tough – like one thing I've seen from Evan Mobley early on in his career is guys that are just that physical can really overpower him and really wear him down. And that's probably what Julius Randle is going to do as the series goes on. So they're going to need Darius Garland to really step up and be like 1B. It can't just be Donovan Mitchell, the guy, and then everybody else. Darius Garland kind of has to be 1B to Donovan Mitchell's 1A.
Yeah, I think last week when we were on just talking about this series and some of the preview, I think Super Mario brought up that he was not too high on Darius Garland coming into this series. And some of that did come to fruition. Only one assist out of your star point guard and a tight game like that. Now, obviously, just the raw assist number is not going to show the full story. A lot of passes could have led to just missed shots. I mean, on a poor shooting night, that just happens sometimes. But still, you'd expect a little bit more than that. My last thing on this game is just I got to give a formal apology out to not only the Knicks organization, but especially Jalen Brunson, because he was really good last year in that first round series when Luka Doncic missed some games, goes to the Knicks, and I'm like, oh, like that's a good signing. He's going to make them better, but I didn't think he was going to make them this much better. So, we got to our preseason predictions, and I didn't even have this team making the play-in. And now I'm looking at myself And I was silly. I watched this man have a 40-point playoff game and a win. And I put no stake into it. And I don't know why I didn't, but this is my formal apology. I'm sorry. I was fooled. I was not familiar with your game, Jalen. You have led this Knicks team to as close to the promised land as they've been in a long time. And Jalen Brunson versus Donovan Mitchell continues to be one of the freshest young rivalries in the NBA.
As an ambassador of the Jalen Brunson fan club, we accept your apology, man, because there's a lot worse disrespect, I think, among Jalen Brunson discourse in the offseason. And really during the season, too. This man had an all-NBA caliber year. He played great basketball, and he is a champion. He's a two-time national champion. That's why I'm not surprised that his game gets better once we get to the postseason. Like, he just continues to rise to the occasion, man. Like, dude is a winner. He is a hooper, and that's why I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks get out of this series, because they have somebody like Jalen Brunson who is a dog when it comes to these winner-go-home situations.
Definitely. He's been great with the Knicks this year, and apology is indeed accepted. The only note I will say on that is it is clear that this man did not watch one of my 3 videos on Jalen Brunson through 2021, but that's okay. He was not aware of the man who ran the NBA yet, so we can apologize the absence.
A little late to the party, that's all it was.
Just a bit.
I was a psycho for that, having 3 videos on Brunson in 1 year. But what can I say?
Hey,
We are fans of Jalen Brunson on this podcast.
Love Jalen
He'd be
Brunson.
a gatekeeper, man. Just be like, oh, if you weren't on him before 2022, nah, you're not allowed to be a fan of Jalen Brunson.
Man, you might not be able to be like prime Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook, but you can be Jalen Brunson, man. I promise y'all that, kids. Y'all can be Jalen Brunson. It's possible.
Definitely, man. Definitely. Best post footwork from a guard in the league right now, and that's something that anyone can put the time in and work on, no doubt about it. That's enough Knicks love for now. We'll see how their game 2 plays out and what is surely to be a very long and competitive series. But let's move on to the series that was the most anticipated and certainly did not disappoint on Saturday night, and that would be the Sacramento Kings having their first home playoff game in a very long time, playing against the defending champs, and it did not disappoint. There was a potential shot to send it to overtime in the dying minutes. The Kentucky backcourt had an absolutely brilliant game, and it was a fun game that we could take a lot away from as far as how the series is going to play out. I'll get your thoughts first, Gabe. What did you think of the first game in this very good matchup between the Warriors and the Kings?
Hey, man, Kentucky boys, stand up. Absolutely great performance, and especially the playoff debut from De'Aaron Fox. It was a great game, just across the board. You know, both sides brought a lot to the table, really close the whole way throughout. You just saw a lot of what you expected to see. Like, it was anticipated for a reason. Game 2 is on currently, and it's another really close game as we approach halftime. So 2 really evenly matched teams. I think most people had this going at least 6 or 7, and at this rate, it's looking like it might go to that, because if the Kings can take this game 2, you know, they might go back to the Bay, and I could easily see the Warriors taking 3-4. Then you're in that dogfight for those last 3. I think the main takeaways from this game for me was, you know, the Warriors' front court offense, or their defense rather, did a pretty good job on Sabonis and limiting the actual production of the Kings' front court. However, the Kings' guards were able to get inside with ease, it seemed. If you look at the shot charts for both De'Aaron and Malik Monk, like, they were getting in there effectively, making a lot of their shots inside. You know, it didn't seem too hard for them. And so those points in the paint, like, they got up there, and it took pretty much all of it to get the win against a really good Warriors team. I mean, they perform better on the road than they have for a lot of this season. So I don't know if those yips that have got them on the road throughout the regular season are all still there. There were definitely some downsides, but being able to stay in this close, a good sign, last thing I want to mention before I pass it off is, and I know it's been just repeated everywhere, but I'm going to repeat it one more time. Steph Curry missing the last shot, as the Steph Curry fan on the podcast, does not make him not clutch. I want to relate it to, LeBron in Game 6 in 2013. Yes, Ray Allen hit that final shot, but LeBron is the one who scored all those points to get them into position to do that. Steph Curry put the Warriors in position to win this game. He scored a lot down the stretch, as did De'Aaron Fox, is the most clutch scorer in the league. So just a really good clutch battle. And Steph just so happened to miss the last one to end the game. But overall, I don't think you can go around and say, oh, Steph Curry is not clutch. He's 2 for 11 on final shots, because he did a lot down the stretch and made winning plays to get them to a spot where they could even try to win it.
Nah, Steph ain't clutch, man. Come on now. Change the title of this video to "Is Steph Curry clutch?"
Yes. So your guys' best point guard in the league did not make the playoffs.
Get all the Warrior fans, man. I mean, Steph Curry didn't have to play with Dwight Powell, man. So that's the story for me. Anyways, I like to challenge Gabe's point. I feel like this was another typical road game for the Warriors. Poor defense, losing in a close game. I feel like I've seen that story a lot this season. So I like what Draymond said. I mean, he recorded a podcast right after the game. I don't know if I like that, but I like what he did say on his podcast. He was like, we don't really take more victories. And I think that's true. I mean, even though they only lost by 3 points in that game, which came down to the last shot, there's not really that much to take away. De'Aaron Fox killed them. Hopefully as the series goes on, they will find a way to neutralize him. But I expect Sabonis to have a bigger impact. You can't allow I think not only did Malik Monk have 32, I think Trey Lyles had 19, 20 points. Trey Lyles had a big game off the bench too. That's stuff that you can't allow guys off the bench to, get about 50 points. That is something that you just can't let happen in the playoff game. So moving forward, definitely going to be, the Warriors are going to need production from other guys as well. This is a tough matchup both ways, because the Warriors have a lot of experience, but they also have a lot of miles on their body. And this is a Kings team that is young. They're up and down. They've been up and down all year, as far as pace goes. I'm not playing up and down. One of the fastest teams in the league when it comes to, just putting points in the bucket of historic offense. It's a tough matchup for Golden State, man. That they're going to have to really dig deep. Mike Brown was sitting on that bench for all them years, man. So he's pretty familiar with them as well. So, this series, I hope we get the full 7 games, because I think a full 7 games of this could be just iconic, historic basketball. And I know Devin, this series might be a little tough for him to watch because there's so much offense. But how can you not enjoy these teams, scoring 130 points each game, and, these games being close, man? You get to see De'Aaron Fox and Steph Curry down the stretch. Definitely going to be a fun series. But, Sacramento getting that game 1 win, I think was, very, telling that they're here for this series, and this is going to be a very, very tough series for Golden State to get out of.
Definitely a very good win for the Kings in Game 1. I'm on record saying that I thought Golden State were going to win Game 1, so very impressive win for them. And Fox and Monk didn't seem fazed by the moment at all. I mean, these guys came in their first big moment in the playoffs, and they just looked right at home. Fox had his great game offensively, shot the ball from 3 very well as well. Was 4 of 8 from deep. The most impressive thing for me with De'Aaron Fox's game, obviously he was great offensively. This man was chasing around Steph Curry all night and still dropped 38. This guy was putting in work on both ends. And obviously Curry did end up having a pretty good game. But Curry didn't really do much until the fourth quarter. He kept Curry in check for most of the game. And even though Curry had a good game, it wasn't anything outrageous. Fox did a pretty good job on Curry for the majority of that game. So the fact that he did that on both ends, absolutely ridiculous. Great performance from Fox. Trey Lyles, like you mentioned, had a great game as well. He put up 16 off the bench. He shot 4 or 6 from deep. Shout out to Alex Len minutes as well. He looked really good in his bit of minutes off the bench. He had 7 boards in 12 minutes. And the Kings really just went the way of dominating the boards. They gave Alex Len his minutes. Sabonis dominated the glass, even though it wasn't great offensively. Ended up out-rebounding the Warriors by 9. They just focused on dominating the glass, and it worked out very well for them. And even though Keegan Murray didn't shoot the ball that well, they were still I had enough guys who were doing their thing on the offensive end that they were still that good because they just have that many guys, and that's what makes them so elite offensively. And if Fox and Monk are going to keep doing what they did, it's going to be tough. And like you said, Gabe, Fox and Monk lived in the paint. I mean, Monk was 14 of 14 from the free throw line. He was getting to the paint and drawing some fouls at a pretty ridiculous rate. And that's the biggest thing that the Warriors are going to have to clean up. And that's going to be the biggest thing that they're going to struggle with is having good defense at the point of attack on Fox and Monk, because Curry and Clay and Poole are going to be their primary guys out there. And none of them are great point of attack defenders. Now, I expect Gary Payton minutes to go up throughout the series, and he might get some time on those guys. Wiggins is now back in the starting lineup. He looked very good in game one, despite missing that corner three late in the game that they would have liked to have back. Those guys are going to be really important for them, and maybe some of that extra size gets put on Fox or Monk throughout the game and throughout the series. But that's going to be the biggest thing for the Warriors, is figuring out how they try to manage that dribble penetration, because if they can't get a grip on that, it's going to be really tough for them moving forward. Shout out to Draymond. He had a pretty good game still with how he dealt with Sabonis at times when he was on him, and looked really good on the offensive end, trying to get some guys some open looks. And, of course, Wiggins is just mentioned. But they're going to have to figure out that defense on Fox and Monk, because that's what torched them game one, and that's probably what's going to continue to torch them with the personnel they have. So figuring out who they put on those guys, how their rotations work with how many minutes Poole gets and where do they try to hide them defensively. Those are going to be the biggest things they have to try and figure out, especially as they move back home.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's just the number one offense in the league doing number one offense in the league things. I think you can look at this game and really say, oh, like, I don't think this offense was a regular season offense that's going to fold in the playoffs. The fact that the Warriors kind of had to pick their poison, and they chose to let the guards kill them, I feel like, because, they put in that good effort on Sabonis. They pretty much played Keegan Murray off the court. I think he only got like 16 minutes in the game. Like, their starting front court really was not able to do much, but then it was those other guys, and especially Monk and then some of the bench unit, that really came in and put in big work. So, I mean, next game, in the current game, and like going forward, they might say, oh, like this game, all right, we're really going to try to stop De'Aaron and stop Malik Monk. Then all of a sudden you might get like a big Harrison Barnes game. Sabonis might give you like 25 to 30 points. And it's just, when you're the best team in the league on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, you're going to be hard to stop because they can kill you in so many ways. I mean, just look at the offensive rebounding differential. They're getting second chance points too. It's going to be hard to beat that.
Yeah, and they're also a team, like Devin said, they just have a lot of guys that can contribute. And they could have a game where, like, they might not have a guy score 25, 30 points, but they got five guys in double figures and they end up winning a game. Like, they're just so flexible on the offensive side of the floor. And they do enough defensively down the stretch to just get enough stops, it seems like, in these close games. So that's just going to be something to watch as the series goes on. But, yeah, just, like, being able to hide, Jordan Poole on defense and, hopefully just Wiggins and, Gary Payton, getting those assignments more for, De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk assignments. Because if those guys are living in the paint, it's going to be very tough for the Warriors to win this series.
Yeah, it definitely will be. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they manage those bench minutes moving forward. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the series, Jordan Poole's like the third guy in minutes played off the bench behind Gary Payton and Dante, because they're just going to need the defense. And as much as Jordan Poole had a solid game offensively in game one, I don't know if they're going to be able to get away with him on the defensive end with how much he gets picked on that end compared to what they can get from Gary Payton and even from Dante, who had a pretty good game one as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they juggle that. That'll bring us to the start of our Sunday games, where the Lakers and Grizzlies kicked things off. We will preface this by saying we are all very much hoping and praying that Ja Morant is ready to go for the rest of the series, because game one was really fun. Obviously, differentially, it doesn't look great that it was a 16-point win for the Lakers, but this was a close game right down to the last few minutes, and then Ja was out, and the Lakers kind of went away with things. But this was a really fun game. Both teams looked very competitive, and it looked about as competitive as most of us expected it to be. So let's just hope that Ja is ready to go and able for game two and moving forward. But I'll get your thoughts first, Tyrik. What did you see from this Lakers and Grizzlies game?
Man, like you said, hopefully Ja is okay. It's very fortunate that it's not like a Tyler Hero situation where like they announce something bad like right away. So it gives me hope like he might miss game 2, which it seems like is the trend is trending towards that now. But hopefully he'll be ready for when the series shifts to LA. With that being said, I think the Grizzlies will be okay if he does miss a game because they played a lot of basketball without John Morant. So they can definitely give themselves an opportunity to win a game 2. But the Lakers, obviously, I mean, you get a game where LeBron doesn't play great. AD was dominant, like defensively, for pretty much the entirety of the game. But offensively, especially down the stretch, it was Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura. Like, I don't think anybody had that on their bingo cards coming into this game. So that was very shocking, but that's very good for the Lakers that they're getting guys outside of, really their top, 3, main guys, being Braun, AD, and D'Angelo Russell. They got, Austin Reeves like their 4th guy, and then somebody off the bench and Hachimura basically dropping 30 points. That's an amazing thing to get in the game 1 road win. But I got to give credit where it's due. Anthony Davis was dominating this game, especially in that first half. Up until like he got that shoulder stinger, he was playing just amazing basketball. He really set the tone for this team. I think he had like 3 or 4 blocks in the first quarter. He was really dominating. And for some reason, the Grizzlies kept trying to go at Anthony Davis, and he was showing them every time why that's a bad strategy. And that's just what we get. This is playoff Anthony Davis is actually a real thing. He's one of the best playoff performers in the league. And he showed that in game 1. But then you get down the stretch and, obviously John not being on the court hurts. So Jaren Jackson had to take on a lot more offensive responsibility, which he has been doing. But it's tough, not having John. And you got, Rui hitting every shot that he takes. And Austin Reeves in the pick and roll cannot be stopped down the stretch, which was definitely a little surprising to see that, he dominated as well as he did down the stretch. So I'll be interested to see what adjustments Taylor Jenkins makes. But, very good road win for the Lakers and just really goes against every LeBron team's formula of game 1. We're going to, feel it out, see, what coverages they're running, what rotations they're running. And we might lose it, but it was pretty much the complete opposite because for a lot of this game, like the Lakers were in control, and they were able to fight back on every single Memphis Grizzlies run that was had. So very impressive win by LA.
Yeah, I just felt like throughout the entire game, the Lakers seemed to maintain a bit of a lead, and then Memphis would make it real close, and then there was just more timely shot making by the Lakers all the way up into the end where they started to pull away. Throughout the whole game, just the fact that Rui was able to do that, Austin Reeves, like the strength of their depth pieces, even going back to the play and thinking about like a crunch time moment where LeBron drives in, kicks it to Dennis Schroeder. We've seen times where LeBron kicks it out, the other person misses the shot, and then everybody's like, oh, LeBron doesn't have that killer instinct. Why'd he pass? Like, he can pass the guys, and they're going to make shots, and they're going to make plays that win the game, so it's not all on one guy. And that's a great thing to see when you're going into a series like this against another team who also plays from a lot of different angles, has a lot of different guys that can beat you. Jaren had a really good game 1 on the offensive side of the ball, which was something that I honestly expected to an extent because he's pretty much going to be their entire front court focal point. A lot of other guys are out, so he has to step up. And especially the last couple months of the season, he had a lot of really good offensive performances that I think were kind of undervalued because of just how good he was on the defensive side of the ball. The jaw injury did just it kind of put a damper on things, but from the Lakers side, at that moment, you get an opportunity where you're like, hey, they're shorthanded and we can steal home court. Like, we need to get this done. And right when that happened, that's really when they took over and pulled away. So the fact that they were able to just completely capitalize on that opportunity shows me that this is a team that can really just take advantage of opportunities. And they say, like, that luck is when opportunity meets preparation. So they seem prepared for the moment, and whether it's like some injury luck that gets them to the next round, it shows that they have everything they need to take advantage of that.
Hey, you got to be healthy and be available to have success in the postseason. That's just part of the run. It's part of every run every year. So I'm very well known as someone that is not a fan of that being an asterisk on any type of playoff run because that's every playoff year. That doesn't change any year, but regardless of injuries, the Lakers played great. You guys touched on Rui and Reeves playing well. D'Angelo Russell had a decent game as well for his playoff standards. AD was great defensively. LeBron was fine. Wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. Hit a couple of big threes down the stretch. But if you're a Memphis fan, as long as you know that Ja is back, you probably feel okay knowing that you still lost in a relatively competitive game where Rui Hachimura was 1 point off a career high. And I love Rui Hachimura. He's probably not doing that again. You're probably not going to get as much secondary production from the Lakers. And even though this is an improved three-point shooting team over the course of the season, they're far improved from when they were historically bad to start the year. They're probably not going to have a ton of games where they're shooting 43% from three in this series either. So there's some reason to believe, if you're a Grizzlies fan, that there's probably going to be a little bit of regression to the mean here for the Lakers. The other positive sign for the Grizzlies was that Jaren Jackson Jr. was ridiculous on both ends. I mean, he did his typical defensive player of the year thing that he does on defense, and congrats to him today as we're recording this for being named the defensive player of the year this season. But he was elite on the offensive end as well, creating his own shot, hitting some catch and shoot threes. His improvement on the offensive end over the last 3 months has been absolutely amazing and was crucial to the Grizzlies just staying in this game. The biggest concern for the Grizzlies, and it was overshadowed by the fact that Reeves and Rui had such a good game, but it was what we discussed when we were talking about this matchup a week ago, and it was the fact that the Lakers are just bigger, they're stronger, they're going to dominate in the paint, and they're going to dominate on the boards, and that's what happened. The Lakers out-rebounded the Grizzlies by 13 on the night, and that was felt, especially when Jaren's off the court. There's no Brandon Clark stepping in off the bench. There's Santi Aldama. And although he was fine, Santi Aldama is just not dealing with those types of matchups well. He's not dealing with a AD, with a Jared Vanderbilt. He's just not that guy, and that's why they have Steven Adams and Brandon Clark on the roster. Unfortunately, they're just without a significant amount of size right now. That's going to be the biggest thing for them moving forward that they're going to have to try and deal with. They're going to have to, A, rebound as a team really well, but B, they're just going to have to be really sound offensively and make sure they're hitting their shots, because they're going to give up some extra possessions just by pure nature of the injuries they're dealing with right now. The other thing for the Grizzlies to take note of is what they end up doing at the end of their rotation, especially if Ja's out. I'm not sure how I feel about David Roddy minutes as it is already. If Ja's out, maybe John Conchar ends up taking in more of a role, and maybe he ends up being the guy at the end of the rotation over David Roddy. But that's the other thing to look at for the Grizzlies, because they got a pretty good seven with Aldama and Tyus Jones off the bench. Who that 8th and 9th guys end up being, if Ja ends up missing time, will be the thing to look out for.
Yeah, it's like last season they had Zaire Williams coming off their bench playing pretty solid, and with him not being there, it's tough. And it's like, you kind of want to give Roddy those minutes. I wouldn't hate giving him like a short leash in game 2, see what he has maybe. But like you said, it's tough. It's tough to make that decision if Ja is out. But if Luke Kennard is going to be getting his minutes, brother got to knock down some shots, man. He got to knock down some shots. He was missing a lot of wide open ones. I would just like to see, the leading 3-point shooter in basketball be a little more effective from downtown, because especially when you got guys on the other side not missing, Luke is the guy that has to be able to stretch the floor if he's going to get those minutes, in this series. He has to be able to stretch the floor and really be a big factor, I think, for the Grizzlies, especially if John Morant's going to be out.
Yeah, I know that they're really used to playing without him, just given how much time he's missed, not only last season, not only this season, but especially late into the season, given some of those off-the-court things that had him out for a while. But even if they're used to that, the thing that would worry me is this game got out of hand like the second that he went out. And while that can be demoralizing to a team to lose your star player in the midst of your first playoff game this year, it's still just like, if the Lakers were able to take over that heavy right then, they're probably going into game 2 thinking, oh, Ja's still out? Look at what we just did to them to close that game. Clutch shot making by Austin Reeves screaming, I'm him. Like, I think the Lakers are feeling like, oh yeah, we're gonna take that easy. Like, we can destroy them if Ja's not on the court. And then you're going back to LA, and with how much turmoil they've been through and how big and passionate that fan base is, like, those fans are going to show out to game 3 and 4. And then all of a sudden you could quickly find yourself down 1-3 and it basically be over. So the scheming is of the utmost importance for game 2 because it's like if they don't take this game 2, they're in prime position to drop this series quick.
Was that the case? I thought Ja got hurt like late third quarter. And it was a 1 point. It was like 113, 112, and then the Lakers went on a 15-0 run to end the game. So it's like, even though Ja missed, pretty much the whole fourth quarter, late third, they were still right there. So it's like, it is demoralizing that they flamed out so bad down the stretch, but I don't know. It still gives me some kind of hope. And like Devin said, like, shout out to Rui. He had an amazing game. The best game I think I've ever seen him play live. But you wouldn't bank on him having a game that impactful probably the rest of this series. I'll be pretty confident, taking that to Vegas. I don't think he's going to have a 29-point game again. So, I guess in this case, you do take some type of moral victory. It's like, yeah, Ja went out. Rui had the game of his life. Austin Reeves had the fourth quarter of his life. And it was a 1 point game with, a couple minutes left, and they just, really dominated down the stretch. So, game 2 is big. Definitely must win for Memphis, whether Ja Morant is out there or not. So the Lakers did their job, man. They're playing with house money at this point. They stole home court, even if they lose game 2. They're going into LA feeling good either way.
Yeah, I mean, the Lakers, they definitely didn't take it away instantly. They held up for a little bit, but still, Ja Morant played 30 minutes into that, in that game. And a player like Ja Morant down the stretch, I mean, it probably wouldn't have been a 1 point game. I think if you had Ja Morant out there instead of who they did, they're probably up in that game. It's probably not a 1 point game, and they could have taken game 1 pretty easily. So
I wouldn't say that.
It was the Lakers in a good place.
I feel like watching the game, the tide seemed to shift even when Ja Morant was on the court. Really, the tide started to shift. I think they subbed Desmond Bane out, and then the Lakers went on this little run, and it's just and then Ja tried to, explode on Anthony Davis and ended up getting hurt. It was just a weird situation, man. But I think the good thing is they're used to not playing. I mean, they're used to playing without Ja Morant a fair amount, so they're gonna have a chance. But the odds are even more stacked against them, more than they kind of already were with their front court depth being as light as it is. So now guys are really gonna have to step up and play a little bit out of their bodies to give themselves a chance.
Yeah, definitely. Tyus Jones is going to have to show why he's one of the best backup point guards in the league, because they might have to lean on him big time if Ja is going to end up missing some time. That'll bring us to the other series that unfortunately is going to have at least one guy missing some time and another MVP candidate potentially missing some time as well, and that'll be the Miami Heat against the Milwaukee Bucks. Unfortunately, we got no news that Tyler Hero will be out for what will likely be the rest of the playoffs. Giannis is also in a situation where it remains uncertain what his status will be moving forward on a game-to-game basis, dealing with a back injury, also dealing with a ligament in his wrist, I believe, is the other injury he's dealing with. So Giannis is far from 100%, so he's probably going to be game-to-game for a majority of the rest of the series. And it's another game, and what was the theme on Sunday where the road team took game 1? We'll start with you, Tyrik. What did you see from this game 1 from the Heat and the Bucks?
Well, other than Giannis going down, which, I mean, that's obviously going to change, any type of game plan that you have coming in for both teams. It changes a lot. Eric Spoelstra said that, Giannis going down changes what they wanted to do. So, hopefully he's okay. A lower back injury is just a scary one to hear, especially somebody that bangs as much as he does in the paint. That's just, hopefully it's nothing more than, maybe he just couldn't go the rest of that game, which being Giannis, we know how he plays 110% every time he's on the court. So that's definitely a little nerve-wracking, if you ask me. But with that being said, game 1, I mean, obviously Jimmy Butler, you can't really deny playoff Jimmy what he does. He was incredible. But the Miami Heat shot the basketball better than, pretty much they have all year. They shot the ball really well. And that's even with Tyler Hero going out. Duncan Robinson hit a clutch 3 in the fourth quarter, which was, a good sight, man. Shout out to Duncan for, staying ready and, hitting the big shot down the stretch. But I think even if Giannis misses time, I think Milwaukee could still, they were still in this game, man. They were still fighting. Chris Middleton looked like he hasn't missed a beat. He played amazing. I think they'll still have a chance, even if Giannis misses a game 2 or 3, he might, they might still have a pretty good chance, but definitely a great win by Miami because, You got to take advantage when the best player in the world is not on the court. And they did that, man. So shout out to Miami. Shout out to Jimmy Butler for playing the way he did. And, they're shooters for, shooting the ball really well for one of the very few times it seems like this season.
Yeah, really just the most unexpected thing was, of course, going to be the shooting there. Giannis in or Giannis out, the Heat shooting 60% from the three-point line, it's like, that's egregious. That's, for their standards this season, that's like out of this world. And the best sign for them, if you're a Heat fan, is like when they made it far in the playoffs, both the finals run and the conference finals run last year, like they had those guys that were good shooters, whether it was guys like Duncan Robinson in the first run or, last year with Max Strus and Gabe Vincent. Like that's something they needed to make it far. And while I don't think they're going to match 60%, that'd just be like stupid to even think about. If they could just shoot decently well and Giannis misses like the next even like 2 games, they all of a sudden give themselves a chance. Now, if they were to take advantage of that and come out and win this series, yeah, people would, say things like, oh, it's got an asterisk on it. Oh, Mickey Mouse win because Giannis was out. But like, if you're the Miami Heat, you got to roll with the punches. And the only thing that matters is the fact that you advance. Now, as a fan of the game, I want to see Giannis back and I want to see it go down with both teams 100%. But for the situation they're in now, a series that nobody would have expected them to even have a chance in, now they're in a chance where they can win. And so they got to do as much as they can. They need to come into game 2, and we need Jimmy to stay on his stuff. And these shooters really got to give a performance like that again. Now, there's some guys who I just don't expect to hold up. Like Kevin Love, 18 points is crazy. I know he's had some good performances. And like even last year, like in his last year with Cleveland, was doing some pretty solid stuff, kind of had a bit of like a second wind. But the way he was drawing charges like all game and scoring like that, I swear I saw him pull up for some threes like multiple feet behind the line. I'm like, Kevin Love? Like, what is going on here? There's some crazy things happening with this Heat team that I didn't expect. Kyle Lowry was kind of back to where I expected him to be, doing a whole lot of nothing after his crazy playing performance. But moral of the story, they need to be opportunistic because now they've given themselves a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people that might have expected Miami to get a game. Game 1 was definitely not that game. And, of course, the Giannis injury impacts that, and hopefully he's back in the court soon. But like you mentioned, Miami just shot the ball absurdly well. And we'll have to see now who slides into the starting lineup for Tyler Hero. His injury is going to mean that their secondary guys have to continue to shoot the ball extremely well, and probably not at 60% well, but they're going to have to continue to really contribute with Hero out now because Jimmy and Bam can only do so much. And Jimmy was great game 1, playmaking well, scoring well, good on the defensive end. Bam started quiet but had a much better second half. But realistically, Miami's probably never shooting the ball from 3 as well again this series, shooting 15 to 25. And Milwaukee probably aren't shooting as bad from 3 again. They were 11 to 45 on the night. Their bench was 5 of 22. So I'd expect things to even out a little bit on that front. I have one positive note for the Bucks and one concern for the Bucks. The concern can be rectified, but that requires Coach Bud to make an adjustment. So we'll see how rectifiable that actually is. Chris Middleton looked great. And that's a really good sign if Giannis is not good to go, just to get them through the series. And it's also a good sign if Giannis is good to go, because that means that the biggest thing that probably held the Bucks back from getting into the finals again last year is back and ready to go. And if Chris Middleton can continue to play at that level, then this Bucks team is going to be very, very difficult to stop. The concerning thing I saw from the Bucks last night, or not last night, but when they played against the Heat, was pretty much everything to do with Brook Lopez. And it's not necessarily on him. Some of it is, but part of it is just having to make some adjustments to how Miami were playing against him on offense and on defense. Firstly, he just needs to hit his threes, but that's just straightforward. Everyone in the Bucks needed to hit their threes the other night, and they just didn't. But more concerningly was all of the matchups where Max Strus was spending time on him on the perimeter, and he was just happy to sit out there. I know Brook Lopez hasn't been a back-to-the-basket post-up guy for a while, and he still doesn't on occasion. But if they're going to feel comfortable just throwing Max Strus on him for minutes on end, Lopez needs to recognize that. Drew Holiday needs to recognize that, and they need to get him in the paint. And Bud needs to recognize that and needs to call that out. Someone on that team needs to call that out. There's too many veterans. There's too many guys with way too much experience to just allow Brook Lopez to just sit on the perimeter while Max Strus gets hidden on him. If that's the type of coverage that Miami are going to give to Brook Lopez defensively, they need to exploit that immediately, because that should just not be something they can get away with. Bam should not be able to get away with hiding off of Brook Lopez somewhere else and be more effective defensively. They need to exploit that if that's how they're going to defend it. Secondly, how they manage the drop coverage with Lopez needs to be adjusted slightly as well. They might have to add a little bit more aggression and have him be a little bit higher on that, because Bam in the second half especially was way too effective in the short roll. He was effective scoring from mid-range. He was effective passing out of the short roll. And Lopez has been a little bit more aggressive on that than he typically throughout the year than he was in game one. And that's something they need to adjust going into the rest of the series. That just comes down to Bud and making adjustments, which has been a little bit hit and miss in the past. But those adjustments in of themselves is going to put a lot of pressure on Miami to defend differently and to utilize Bam differently. And that in of itself is going to be a very difficult change for Miami to make, and very difficult for them to be anywhere near as effective. But that comes down to Coach Bud having to make adjustments. So we'll see whether that happens. But please, for the love of God, if Max Strus is covering Brook Lopez, put him in the paint. It's so frustrating to watch. He has to get more involved.
I feel like that was a trend last season as well. I'm not sure.
I'm
not sure which series it was or who was guarding him. But I just remember like smaller guys being on Brook Lopez and they're just not rolling him down to the block. And it's like, I really thought that they would do that with Giannis being out too, because I feel like in games where Giannis doesn't play, that's when we see Brook go back to like his 2012 and like, okay, I can post up now. But they didn't do that. A little concerning. You made a tweet. I think you made a tweet yesterday, Devin, either after or during the game, but you were like, yeah, Miami's not really like the typical 8 seed that you would like to see as a 1 seed. Like that's just, because they have a guy in Jimmy who turns into another, tier of a player in the postseason. And, it's like a big if, but if their shooters are able to shoot the basketball, somewhat effectively, they're a very tough team to beat. And if you get Bam playing like how he did in the second half, makes him even tougher to beat. So it's just like, not saying Milwaukee should be, shaking, but, giving this Heat team confidence is a dangerous game. I will say that much.
Yeah, I think the silver lining is like all those missed threes, you just don't expect that to happen again. And out of all adjustments to make, that's probably like the easiest one you can make is, hey, we have a guy that had all-star appearances off of being a back-to-the-basket player. Let's let him put his back to the basket because our biggest paint presence is not going to be on the floor. And the fact that Chris Middleton could come out, and I think they said before the game, like this was his first game all season with no minutes restriction, and he gives you 33 and 9, like that's a really good sign. And if Giannis can be back by game 3, I could really see the Bucks taking both games in Miami. Miami played good in game 1. They did everything they needed to do, but I still don't really trust them that much. They haven't given me reason to over the 83 prior games, 84 even, I think. So still a very winnable series on both sides. And it's like Giannis or no Giannis, it was still a game pretty late. And so with the Bucks playing as poorly as they did in certain aspects and still keeping it competitive without, in my opinion, the best player in the league, that's a really good sign to have, man. That is a really good sign to have.
Yeah. It's just, hopefully they break this trend of their shooters not being able to shoot in the postseason, because it was a trend last season, and game 1 is continuous. So hopefully they can shoot a little better than a little under 25, or a little over 25% from 3.
Definitely. That'll be the biggest key for the Bucks moving forward alongside the health of Giannis. Let's move on to the LA Clippers against the Phoenix Suns, which was the third team on the day,
What a game.
where we saw the road team end up beating the home team, where the Phoenix Suns, who are considered favorites by many to get out of the West, as well as the three of us, ended up losing to the Clippers in what was a very good game, a very interesting game in some of the stat lines and some of the rotations that were used. But we'll get your thoughts first, Gabe. You do have the Suns as your team winning the finals, but you are also a Clippers fan, so this would have been a bit of a conflicting game for you.
Tough game.
What did you see from the Clippers in their first game against the Suns?
Man, I saw a great basketball game because, two of my just beloved teams, they really went out there and they left it all out there. And the funniest take that's just so accurate is something that I think we're all pretty used to. And that is that Russell Westbrook is like the greatest player and the worst player of all time at the same time. The fact that you can be that bad offensively, but the fact that at the same time, Russell Westbrook was playing some of the greatest defense you've ever seen, making game-saving plays with the hustle, hopping out of bounds, throwing it at Devin Booker. Since when is Russell Westbrook like the best defensive guard in the league? Like that, what is going on here? He was getting like poke-aways on KD when he's trying to drive to the basket, which is a bit more understandable because they played so long together. I'm sure he knows some of those tendencies and good matchup for him. But like, hell of a game from him for a lot of really interesting reasons. I feel like there's no way that he can, 3 for 19? I don't think he can physically do that again. And if he started being that inefficient, I think at that point, Tyronn Lue's going to have to say, all right, bro, stop shooting the ball. But overall, like, what won the Clippers this game? It was his defensive effort. It was Kawhi showing shades of not just 2019, but 2021. He's known to have these times where he plays really well in the playoffs. Playoff Kawhi is a real thing. And so I can't even say I'm too surprised by that. It's just another classic, Kawhi's going to get to his spots and he's going to make it no matter what you do to him. That's just who he is. He reminded everybody who he is that might have forgot since he wasn't playing last year. Great things from him. They had some really good production from depth pieces like Eric Gordon, Terrence Mann, Norman Powell all had double figures. So a lot of that depth that I really hyped up over some of the later half of the season of these are guys when they get in the playoffs can really help them out. And we thought, Eric Gordon, he was on the Rockets. They had terrible culture. He was doing some really stupid stuff there. Like, is he going to contribute? I think now you're seeing, now it's crunch time, and he's a guy who's been in these kinds of situations. Now he's contributing. Norman Powell, he was on a championship team. He's contributing. So it makes sense. And not every guy had a great night on the offense, but enough guys did, and they have enough pieces to where it was able to get them this game. On the Suns end, I got to give you credit, Devin, because we had two differing opinions on this before the series started. And I was like, they made the KD trade and they still kept a solid amount of depth. So I think they'd be okay. And you had a really great point where you're like, yeah, they have a lot of guys that can play minutes and that can go out there and be bodies, but they're mid. That's exactly what you said. There's a lot of mid depth. And you were 100% right. You really did not see a lot from this team off the bench. It was like the main guys, KD had a good game. Like Devin Booker had a pretty good game. Ayton had a pretty good game. Chris Paul, at least in the playmaking department, did his thing. But, there just wasn't that extra push. And when some of the Clippers depth guys were giving you that, and a battle of two pretty good teams, that's probably not going to win you these games because, eventually your 1 through 5 is going to get kind of tired. And when the Clippers have 7 through 9 out there giving you great production, you're just going to get burnt out and lose at the end. And in a game that came down to the clutch battle like this one did, it really makes sense. The last note I want to bring up before I bring it off as well that a lot of people have been talking about is the Suns were winning every game with KD and Book playing, with Josh Okogie starting. He was in that lineup and he was playing pretty well for them. So I don't know why the decision was made to then bring Torrey Craig in the starting lineup for this game. I don't know if they'll go back to what they were doing before because this just immediately led to a loss, a close loss, yes. But I just want to bring up the fact that that's been getting questioned a lot from a lot of different places. I know they're both like kind of defensive wing type guys, but I would think you'd keep going with the guy that's working, just personally.
Or at least play Okogie more than 7 minutes, but I'll discuss the bench more later.
Yeah, I was about to say I only remember seeing Okogie on the court like for like one stretch of the basketball game. And I was like, damn, I just noticed I haven't seen him on the court, which was just kind of funny. Weird little, thing by Monty Williams there, I guess. Just game one though, and the Clippers, that is the game that they have to win because you get the performance from Kawhi, you get the performance from guys like Norman Powell. Eric Gordon had a very good game. Russell Westbrook affected the game in many ways while having a horrendous shooting percentage, which is only something Russell Westbrook can probably do. Not many players in the history of basketball can go 3 for 19 and affect the game like he did. And he made a lot of great plays down the stretches as far as rebounding. And I haven't seen Westbrook defend like that in probably like 7 years or so. Like, it's been a very long time since we've seen him really like get down and, really try and lock up. And he did a phenomenal job on the offensive side of the floor. And then Kawhi Leonard, just being the machine that he is offensively in the postseason, efficient, knocking down big shots. He was amazing. I'm doing it on both sides of the floor as well. This is a game that the Clippers had to win. Now, there are valid concerns about the Suns. I think we, kind of had them like with the depth. I don't like playing 3 bigs. Like they gave Rondell, pretty decent amount of minutes. Didn't love that. I feel like his minutes were just kind of like, offensively, yeah, he might have been, getting his post touches and getting some free throw attempts and stuff. But I feel like defensively, you're just giving it right back. He wasn't really doing that great of a job. So, probably shorten that big rotation, I think, would be helpful. And another thing is when these two teams matched up a couple years ago, I know kind of different rosters, but pretty much the same cores, mainly intact. DeAndre Ayton was able to really dominate the boards. It just seemed like he was kind of out there in game one. He can't lose that Zubac matchup. Zubac, I think, thoroughly outplayed him. And then when you add on to it, Russell Westbrook getting all those offensive rebounds. To me, a lot of that points towards DeAndre Ayton needs to be more aggressive and control the backboards a little more, especially if, he's really the main, like, big presence on the court. They don't really have, anybody that's going to really grab rebounds with him, so it's like he kind of has to be that dominant force on the boards. That's kind of my big takeaways from game one. But shout out to Kawhi and Russell Westbrook for really, controlling the games in different ways, but able to control the game.
Definitely. Playoff Kawhi showed out, and Russ probably had the best 3 for 19 game anyone will ever have. I have a few other points I want to make, but I have to talk about the Suns bench first. Because they had 6 guys come off the bench in a playoff game, which is odd enough on its own. 5 of them played 8 minutes or less, which is absurd. I don't understand that. The guys aren't getting rhythm. There's no consistency in their lineups. Like you said, Chuck Landale came in and got some time in the second half, but he went to Biyombo in the first half. Biyombo played pretty well. The Clippers have 2 legit bigs where Biyombo's a bit more defensively sound, is better on the boards. Biyombo's probably the better fit anyways. Why don't you just stick with one center? Why do you use 2 of them? That doesn't make any sense to me. I think Biyombo's the guy to use in this matchup. I had no problem with Torrey Craig starting, and shout out to Torrey Craig. He had a great game. He put up 22 points. But why are you just like pick a wing? Why is Okogie getting 7 minutes and Wainwright getting 7 minutes? Pick a guy. Okogie played great for you down the stretch, and Ish Wainwright's been pretty good too. But Okogie was in your starting lineup until KD was back, and now he's getting 7 minutes, and you're still not even sure if he should be consistently getting your regular wing minutes because Ish Wainwright is still playing. And Terrence Ross minutes I don't get at all because he's just getting picked on defensively. But then of all the bench guys, you decide Landry Shamet should get 24 minutes?
He was
nothing about the Suns bench makes sense. They need to be using like 8 to 9 max, not 11. Pick a center and use him for a series based on what's best for the matchup. Pick a wing that's based for the series between Okogie and Wainwright and use him for the matchup. Monty Williams might not be far off winning a Coach of the Year award, but how he's handled the absurd amount of mid they have off this bench and how he has designed those rotations have been very bad. And he needs to figure that out before the Clippers' very much better depth ends up being a problem. The Suns' depth ended up giving them 10 points off the bench. The Clippers had 34. That's something they need to figure out very quickly before things get too out of hand. The other thing of concerns for the Suns is I know this is going to be a heavy mid-range shooting team with DeAndre Ayton, with Chris Paul, with Booker, with Kevin Durant. They only took 19 threes in game one. They only hit 32% from three. And as good as this team is, they're probably going to have to shoot a little bit more from three in today's NBA to have success on a regular basis. They don't need to be anywhere near the tops of the playoff teams, but 22, 25 a night, hitting a little bit more, they probably need to get to at least that on a regular basis to have a regular amount of success. On a positive note for the Suns, they were relatively efficient from three with their guys from Booker and KD, and Craig, of course, was great. And the other thing I want to mention is Devin Booker looked really, really good defensively. One of his best defensive games I've ever seen in his career. If he can keep that up, that's really going to help their defense. They need to figure out the bench, because if they A, can't figure out their rotations, and B, can't get any production, which will be helped by getting their rotations figured out, they're really going to struggle against this Clippers team, who looks like they're going to get really good production from their bench this series.
Yeah, personally, if I was in the position to make these adjustments, I would just say, hey, Okogie played really good down the stretch. Let's put him back into the starting lineup. Let's bring Torrey Craig off the bench, and he can play actual minutes off the bench. Didn't really like what I saw from Landry Shaman in game one, but if Monty's got that trust in him, I understand. I would probably put Ish Wainwright in over him to play them, and then just pick, like you said, pick one of those centers, because overall, the center play just – you mentioned earlier about DeAndre Ayton, Tyrik. There'd be moments in the game where it's like, Zubac is getting the board and then putting it up, getting a second chance point, and then it's like, oh, DeAndre Ayton wants to take that personal. So what does he do? Well, he goes down the other end and he puts up like a little mid-range post fade. Like, bro, Zubac and Plumlee combined for 26 rebounds? Why is you taking it personal, a mid-range fade?
It's frustrating, man.
A mid-range fade? Like, bro, get on the glass. Why are you fading? Get in there. Dominating who? You're backing away.
It's so frustrating, man. Like, I just actually looked at the box score for one of the first times, and he had 18 and 8. Did not seem like it. If you told me he had 10 and 5, I would have really believed that. Like, it just seemed like just such a mid game. Like, just it was so nasty. And like you mentioned, Devin, like, just give Biyombo those minutes, because what Londale does might be good against certain matchups, but not when you're going against Zubac and Plumlee, who are very bigs that are gonna set picks, rim run, grab rebounds. That's what they do. Like, you just need somebody to match those minutes, match that intensity. And one thing Biyombo's gonna do, if Ayton ain't gonna do it, Biyombo's gonna play 110% every time he's on the basketball floor. So damn it, if you have to, give him more minutes, like, even if it's at the expense of Ayton, if he's not bringing it on, on the defensive side, on the glass like he should be. So those are just some things. And just playing 11 players is like kind of nuts to me. I talked about being mad because Sam Hauser got minutes. I mean, you're playing 11 guys, 6 guys off the bench, and there's no consistency. I would expect Monty Williams, who's been to the NBA Finals as a head coach, to have a little more decency, in this realm. At least shorten your rotation a little bit. If he played 9 guys, I might not be as mad, but 11 guys is kind of outrageous. So hopefully that was just him. Maybe a fill out thing in game one. Hopefully he makes those adjustments. If I see more than like really 8 guys playing game 2, I'm gonna have a lot of questions.
Definitely. That's that seems to be the primary concern with the Suns heading into game 2. We'll see if they can figure out their bench and some of those rotations heading into it. But that does bring us to the last series of the first round, which was the least competitive of the Western Conference matchups, being the Timberwolves and the Nuggets. All I have to say about this series, and I'll leave it to you guys at that. The Timberwolves start 2 centers, and they got out-rebounded 65-48. I don't know how you could ever expect to have success if that is your game plan.
Let me take the floor, man, because me being the betting connoisseur of the podcast, man, I had a parlay down, and I put Jokic's under on boards as high as you can get it. The man had 12 rebounds in the first half, and I'm thinking like he's going up against Rudy and Cat. I'm like, there's no way Jokic grabbed 16 rebounds. He didn't, but he would have if this game wasn't so lopsided in the second half. So, like you said, you got to have some pride at that point. Sometimes rebounding just comes down to who wants some more, who has more pride. And clearly, the Timberwolves just did not have any pride on the backboards because they got absolutely dominated. And if you're, like you said, if you lose a rebound battle like that, they're lucky that the game was as close as it was at one point because it got out of hand very quickly. And I would not be surprised if this ends up being a 4-game series, man, because if you're going to get dominated like that on the boards, that just shows me like the integrity for the game just isn't really there with this unit right now. So, I'll be a little worried if I was a Timberwolves fan on, maybe the season ending, rather quickly in this series. But shout out to Denver though, because for all the questions that we kind of had, they looked great in that game 1. They looked really good, and that's without Jokic, really dominating, the scoring aspect of the game, just really rebounding the ball really well. But they played really well. So, maybe they can, use this series as a confidence builder, get their defense right because they played really well defensively. And, maybe they can make a decent run.
Dude, the Timberwolves stink. They stink. Like, listen, man. Just in every aspect of the game, there's a reason why I predicted them to fall out of the playoffs and completely lose the play-in tournament. Now, I think they got a little bit lucky because they didn't have to see the Pelicans, who I thought they would. They got a really good matchup against Oklahoma City, so they were able to sneak in. But, man, you are going from Jalen Williams to Nikola Jokic. And for as much as I'll rag on the Nuggets and rag on Jokic and say they aren't real contenders, boy, against the Timberwolves, they look like the 73-9 Warriors. Like, it's just an efficient offensive game from the Nuggets, man. I'm sure the final numbers would have looked a lot better if they were playing their actual guys for the whole game. So, final percentages and all that don't look that great, but it's back to the main point that started this all off. You start 2 centers and you got bullied on the glass like that. Like, it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing. That's all you can say. Like, you scored 80 points. The biggest thing that I was talking about why I didn't believe in the Nuggets was their defense. And more than anything, their interior defense. It's with that beatable interior defense, you scored 80 points. 80 points with 2 centers. I know Rudy's not an offensive guy, but Mike Conley has enough chemistry with him. Get some lobs in. Karl Anthony Towns is one of the greatest offensive centers we've ever seen. What are we doing here? This is just – I know it's a 1-8 matchup, so it's not like it should be close. But, like, what are we doing here, man?
You might be overestimating the chemistry that Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert had. Utah was kind of a dumpster fire in the last couple of years.
Hey, but, they were, but, it's better than most of the other things that Minnesota has going on right now, man. So, you got to pick something good. I mean, not a single 20-point scorer in the game. You can't do anything on offense. You can't do anything on defense. You shouldn't even be here, man. It's just embarrassing. And the only way I can close this off is by putting up my fingers and saying 1, 2, 3, 4 first-round picks and Walker Kessler. Thank you. 4-game series probably incoming.
I'm glad you said that, man. I had a good talk with my dad earlier, and he said the Timberwolves might be the dumbest franchise ever. In making that Rudy Gobert trade. And he's like, that might be the worst trade of all time. And I'm saying, like, yeah, It could be. It could end up being that, man, because he was basically saying like, if they wanted to trade him, he was like, who the hell would want him? I'm like, you got a good point. I don't know many teams that would probably want him right now. So it's like, yeah, that was a very swing for the fences, and if you miss, you're striking out, and it's looking like they might have struck out with that trade, man. But I guess the good sign for Timberwolves fans is the misery will be over soon, and you can look forward to the offseason and whatever that may bring.
It's such a tough spot for the Timberwolves with Rudy because they're in a spot where you can still feel somewhat positive about their future just because of the potential development of Anthony Edwards and McDaniels. But then it just makes the Gobert trade that much more frustrating because trade or not, Gobert's probably not on the team when Anthony Edwards and McDaniels are playing their best basketball, and this team has the most upside to be a competitive team in the West. Because even still, Rudy, absolute worst case scenario, you can't trade off of him. He's on this team for the next 3 years. Those guys are not at their peak then. This Timberwolves team is not at their greatest while Rudy Gobert is on the roster. So as much as I can respect the move from the front office in terms of wanting to try and make a splash and buy in, obviously that's backfired and the amount of assets they gave up looks rough. But they could have benefited from just staying with this roster for a couple of years and then cashing in when Anthony Edwards and McDaniels were at a higher level and got someone who fit the timeline a little bit more. Because at that point, Rudy Gobert is probably off your team. And even at the end of his contract, he's already going to be 33. And at that point, you're just not looking to bring him back, even if he is playing good basketball and it's on a smaller deal. So it's unfortunate timing for where they're at. And unfortunately, they had to give up a ton of picks. And even more unfortunately for them, a young rookie who played really well at the position they acquired to just make it even worse for them for a direct comparison. So unfortunately, they're nowhere better off than they were last year. Anthony Edwards was fine, if you want some level of a positive note. And Kyle Anderson and Jalen Noel were decent off the bench. But Carl Anthony Towns shooting 1 of 7 from deep is just, it's a problem.
Nah, Anthony Edwards was not fine, man. What the hell was he doing with his undershirt, bro? It looked like he just ripped the sleeve off before the game. It was all right. Like, nah, I can't get behind that, man. And you got to look better. If you look better, you might play a little better, and you guys might perform better, man. I can't get behind that, bro. Just saying.
Yeah, that's fair. It was looking a little bit funky.
But even if you take out, Walker Kessler, because maybe he wouldn't develop like he did his rookie year in Utah compared to Minnesota. Even taking that out, you traded Jared Vanderbilt, high impact player on a playoff team right now. You traded away who else?
Malik Beasley, Landro Balmero.
Yeah, you traded away some guys, man. Just a lot of picks. Like, this team would just be better off running it back what they had last year. And maybe you'd be able to make the Mike Conley trade still, because it was still between the same 3 teams. Like, maybe that was still possible. But instead, no, they swung for the fences, and it was either you loved it or you hated it. And it seemed like the people that hated it for a very good reason, because it did not work out. Even though Cat missed a lot of time, I don't think Cat playing more this season would have really helped them too much, because you got 2 slow-footed bigs who aren't great pick and roll perimeter defenders. It's just it's very old school, prehistoric basketball, and it's just not going to work in modern day NBA. So yeah, hit or miss trade, and they missed.
They could have had pick 17 this year, but nope.
A very good draft. Yeah, that hurts.
Pick 16. But yeah, no. Instead that'll be an extra pick for Utah.
Shout out to the Jazz,
man. They really if you went out against the Boston Celtics and you scored 80 points, I'd be like, that's disappointing, but okay. Denver was literally the most average defense in the league. 15th in defense, and 16 teams make the playoffs for reference. So 80 points.
Yeah.
80 points. That's the last thing I gotta say, man. 80 points.
That's enough Minnesota talk, man. I'm sorry. Denver played really well. Yeah, that's enough, man. That series, considering there's a Philly Brooklyn series, that might be the most unwatchable series, man. It might.
Yeah, it might be. Hopefully they can bounce back at home if nothing else. But game one definitely looked rough. They definitely did not look like they were on the same level as Denver. Jokic was just jumping around in the paint and flashing around between spin moves and fancy passes, and yeah, it did not look good.
Bruce Brown was getting buckets off the bench. Fucking Michael Porter Jr. It seemed like he had like 30 in the third quarter. He probably only hit like 4 shots, but it seemed like he had 30.
He had 18 for the game, bro. That's how bad it was. 18
like,
in the game felt like 30 in a quarter.
He hit like 3 pull-up threes in the third, and it just seemed like, oh yeah, the floodgates opened up. It was so bad.
Man. Meanwhile, the Kings are giving themselves a pretty good shot to go up 2-0, up 8 in the fourth.
I got the game on the side, man. And I'm just
Sabonis ran straight into Draymond Green. I don't know what they called that, but
offensive foul.
Yeah. Come on, man. Draymond flopping like
I want the Kings to win this game so bad. Yes, I'm a Warriors hater. I'm still bitter about the finals, yes.
Nah, I'd be liking to see the Kings win this too.
Yeah, it's more so because I just like the Kings, man.
I might have picked Golden State to win it, but I'd be much happier to see the Kings win this.
Hey, man, I like being wrong, bro.
A guy like me picked the Kings because I believed.
I did too. I picked them in 7.
I believed in the beam.
And I was going so back and forth, like even before we started recording, I was still looking at them like, and then by the time we got to it, I think I changed my pick. Because I think I had Golden State in 7 written down. And then right before we got to it, I'm like, I might as well just go to the Kings. I thought I was going to be the only one, personally. I thought I was going to be the only one with the Kings.
Our guest had them at 5. That was absurd.
Hey.
It could happen yet.
They go up 2-0. They got a chance.
It's not wrong yet. So, yeah, you're right.
And we're already seeing Gary Payton and Malik Monk minutes. It's only a matter of time before that happened.
Right. Shout out to Jaren, though. Depoy. I know you briefly brought it up earlier, but I was getting worried because I was seeing a lot of Mobley propaganda over the last week or so. Looking at the little cheat sheet from whoever made it, about the voters and stuff. I kept seeing Mobley's name. I'm like, man, don't do this. Don't rob Jaren of a worthy defensive player of the year. But no, he got it. He deserves it. Gabe's stat that he likes to say, they went from bad on defense to top 3. And, that's the Jaren Jackson effect, man. So I'm glad he won the award, man, because he definitely, had an amazing season and definitely deserves it.
Yeah, that was well deserved. Mobley ended up finishing 3rd, so ended up not being a concern. Although Brook Lopez had over 300 points himself, and Jaren finished with 391, so Brook was deservedly 2nd. But Mobley in there as well. I mean, I'd expect Mobley and Jaren to have a lot of fun battles and debates for that award over the next decade, as young as they are. But Jaren deservedly so won this year's battle and gets his first of what I would expect to be several depoys over the next decade.
Most important player on the Grizzlies? I don't know.
I mean, he's been more available as of late, which we would not be saying about Jaren 18 months ago. But
yeah,
once he came back from his injury this year, he was consistently available.
Oh my goodness. Why did Draymond just step on Sabonis?
Draymond just be doing Draymond type things at this point.
Why did he just hit him with the Seth Rollins curb stomp?
That's egregious, man.
Yeah. Hey, Drake got the towel on. He's like, yeah, I'm probably getting kicked.
That's some crazy stuff to be doing while on 4 fouls as well.
Jesus, man. Oh, God. Yeah, this series is wicked. I can't wait to watch Draymond's podcast tonight.
Nah, this is some absurd behavior, man.
No doubt. Man. That's some crazy behavior.
I got any random shout outs from the first weekend of the playoffs?
Not really. I think
Nikhil, Nikhil Malik
I love
Monk,
seeing
man.
Nikhil getting starter minutes. Man. That's the one thing I was like, okay, Nikhil, I see you, man.
It's nice to see. Nice to see. Maybe not the score and the potential scoring outbreak like we were seeing with the Pels, but looks like a much improved defender. Still contributing a bit on the offensive end as well, and looks like he might be finding himself a bit of a role. So it's nice to see.
Hey, I was scared he wasn't gonna find a home. I was scared he was gonna be in the G League at some point because last year was kind of rough for him. But he said he might have found a home, found a little role. So hopefully he can keep that up, man. I really love seeing him just getting started minutes. I was like, is that Nikhil? I'm like, it is Nikhil. Okay, my guy's out there. Love to see it, man. I kind of mentioned earlier, but Duncan Robinson hit a big three in the fourth quarter, which was just like a great sight, man, because he's been through a lot, just not getting minutes, not shooting the ball great over the last couple of years, but hit a big shot in that fourth quarter yesterday, man. So I got to give my shout out to him. It was the only shot he hit, but it was a clutch one nonetheless.
Hey, he might have to keep that up now with Hero out, so it's good to see.
Hey, he only played 6 minutes, which was just like, but hey, he played some big minutes. In that second half, hit a big shot, man. But Gabe mentioned Kevin Love. That was kind of
that was gonna be my biggest shout out, man. That the way he was taking charges was literally, I was cackling, bro.
I was like, they said the stat, they were like, yeah, he was second in the league with like 32 charges taken. And I'm thinking like for the last like 3 weeks in Cleveland, he wasn't playing. So I'm like, he missed a decent amount of games and is still top 2 in charges taken. That's like putting your body on the line for real.
He's on his Ersan Ilyasova timing, man.
Hey, shout out to Ersan.
That guy got to Miami, and Lowry just put him in the lab, learning for the best.
It was like, hey, this is all you got to do. This is all you got to do. Speaking of charges, man, that is the worst discourse I think I've seen in quite some time. Especially when you factor in both of those plays were offensive fouls. The defender got there before the offensive player took off. It's like what more do you want to do? At this point, we might as well just not play defense. like to be honest.
All I have to say about that discourse is the fact that is the main talking point on NBA Twitter after a great first weekend of the start of the playoffs tells you everything you need to know about NBA Twitter. And no basketball talk, and we're just complaining about whether charges should still exist.
To be honest, I didn't hear shit about it until after Giannis got hurt. And then all of a sudden there was this big outrage when it was like, plays like that happen fairly often, and it's just a risk that you take when you leave your feet, in the paint, outside of the restricted area. Like it's a risk that you take, man. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's a part of the game, man. Neither of those plays were dirty plays. Like they didn't slide under while those guys were in the air. They didn't push them out the air. It's just a matter of they beat them to the spot and they made the play. It's just like it's the risk that you run. When you're leaving your feet, jumping 35, 40 inches in the air, it's just part of the game at this point.
Definitely. I mean, I don't know how else you want guys to defend that. I mean, if you want to encourage that guys start going up vertically with them, that's one thing, but guys colliding midair has its own risks in of itself. So, I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, unless you want to start just saying, look, if a guy's in the air, you have to get out of the way. I mean, if we start doing that, that's a whole other problem. So that just is what it is. And like you say, there's just inherent risk in that type of play. And that's just the way it's always going to be when you have athletes that are that big and that physically gifted that are having such plays on an NBA court. It's just the way it's going to be.
I wonder what happened because Steph shot a technical free throw. But yeah, that was just the craziest discourse that I woke up to earlier. I'm like, is this really the conversation that we're having, man? Like during the postseason?
Monday morning after what I would consider a pretty darn good first weekend of the playoffs, and that's what we get.
Now Sabonis is shooting a technical free throw, so I'm
assuming Draymond must have got a flagrant. I think
Draymond got a flagrant. Yeah, he ran down the tunnel.
Oh, he got a flagrant too, huh?
Yeah, he ran down the tunnel. He's done.
That was not a basketball play.
And Looney's on 5 fouls right now, so this could get ugly if Looney picks one up.
Oh, Sabonis can make free throws. Yeah, you gotta love Trayvon, man. For better or for worse, gotta love him.
He's consistent.
He's a
He
guy.
is him. That's for sure.
He is a
He is
guy, man.
he is true to himself. That's one thing I will give him.
Hey, so Gabe, I need to know, man. When's the next video dropping?
Hey man, I don't have class tomorrow.
You know what topic you're doing?
Hey man, it might be a quiz or a ranking. Something smooth, man. Getting more reps under the belt.
Let us see it, man.
I might have to do a quiz after I keep getting waxed in Jeopardy, man. I can't take it anymore.
I had to scrap my video idea because I'm just like, I wanted it out before the first playoff game, but that didn't work out. So I'm probably just gonna scrap it. I had the thumbnail made and everything. I'm gonna have to scrap it. It just doesn't make sense to post it anymore.
Yeah, those ones suck, but it happens. Such as the way it goes. Sometimes the timing just doesn't work.
Facts. I'd rather put my energy into a different video than just throw out something that kind of doesn't make timely sense anymore.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It'd be like if I uploaded my KD and Brooklyn video after the KD trade and not before.
Didn't the trade happen like a day later too, or
Something like that? Yeah, it was like a day or a day and a half later.
I was so mad for you because
So
unfortunate. That is just terrible timing, man. You gotta love the NBA.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. I wasn't too salty about it because the video wasn't doing that well anyways, so it is what it is. But if it was doing well and then he got traded, I mean, it probably would have got views, but the view duration probably would have been like 30 seconds. So
Right.
dude, that's like the freaking like Pat Bev tweeting, "Oh, let's run it back" when they traded for all the Timberwolves guys.
Get him out of here.
He was instantly gone. That was terrible.
brutal timing.
Man. My last video actually did good. It was like a 1 out of 10 for a while, and then it ended up being a 2 out of 10.
Yeah, that did pretty well.
I'm like, I'll take that, man. Just ranking jerseys. I'm like, shit. I'll take it.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely take that.
Hey man, my last one was a 101.
1 of 1.
Only here.
Hey, next one got to be a 1 of 2, man. Only right.
Fact. A fact.
Only right, bro. I'm starting to think like I might start posting my videos at like early in the morning because I felt like midday just kind of they don't perform as well. But like posting at like 10 a.m. just let them cook a little bit, and then like maybe when people like get done with like classes or whatever they do early in the day, they're like, oh, new video up, let's watch it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing for my last couple. Like last year and back in the off season, I usually would release them during the summer, but that's back when you had. I don't know if you ever recognized it, but I don't know why they got rid of it. But you used to be able to see, like what time of day your subscribers were most on YouTube.
Yep.
And that was typically like 3-4 p.m. So I'd usually upload it around then, but now I've been doing a bit earlier, and it's been doing fine. So, although I don't know, because my peak views when my Houston Rockets video was doing well was like 2-3 a.m. and that's when it blew up the most at its peak. So
Random.
whenever the algorithm picks it up and pushes it, it finds the people that are awake and pushes it to them. So
yeah, I don't think there's really a perfect way to attack the YouTube algorithm. You just kind of gotta find something that I guess works well for you.
yeah, it's like generally speaking, as long as the video is good, as long as you're not uploaded it in like the middle of the night,
Right.
you're probably good.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like I was getting 300, 400 views an hour on my Rockets video through the middle of the night, the one night that it was going crazy. Like
That's wild.
It's just whenever the algorithm likes it enough to start pushing it to that next layer of people.
35 views on my first video, man. I'll take that any day of the week.
Definitely.
Did you even post about it much?
I
I think you posted on Twitter. I think Twitter.
Yeah,
Twitter's the
yeah,
main place I post stuff. So
I think he tweeted about it that afternoon, I think, or something like that. Because I saw you posted it on YouTube that morning. And I went to Twitter. I was like, He didn't
I
tweet
got the
about it,
noti.
but
I got the noti.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like our pod videos get pushed at like really weird times. Like I always like usually check them throughout the day, and then every time I go to bed, like I swear I wake up and there's like a big jump in views.
Yeah,
Maybe we got a
they
bunch
be
of
like that
insomniacs.
sometimes.
We got a bunch of insomniac viewers, man. Like myself.
Yeah, it's like that sometimes for sure.
Gabe had me weak. He was like, yeah, I'm sure my video will get some decent views when I post it on Twitter and you and Devin share it and stuff. I'm like, probably not on my end. I feel like my Twitter followers don't really engage with my stuff, so probably not.
Yeah, no, I tweet my stuff out, but I usually get very minimal views, if any, from my Twitter.
Yes.
Like I still do it just because if I get a couple clicks, it's better than nothing. But it's usually very minimal. I haven't checked in a while, but let's see.
Yeah.
Let's go back to my Pistons video. I think that's the one that had the most impressions. Or even Spurs video here. Spurs, the Spurs video. I had one link click from Twitter. I guess it's usually minimal. And to be fair, most of my impressions usually come from if you retweeted Tyrik. So,
hey man,
not to say that they're the ones that are watching it, but that's usually where most of the impressions are coming from.
I'm here for y'all. If y'all need a couple views, man, I got y'all.
I need that, man. That's Reek knows the Detroit Lions right there, man.
Hey man,
he's famous. He's famous.
I wouldn't say I'm famous. I'm moderately known, like very moderate.
NFC North legend Tyrik, man.
Like extremely moderately known, like 2%.
Yeah, that's how I feel. It's like if anyone mentions that to me, it's like, yeah, nah, no shot. But then every once in a while, I'll get some random person that I like don't regularly talk to that comments on my YouTube videos saying they're from PA, which is my hometown. And it's like that's pretty funny considering we're a city of like 40,000 people. But
man, I had another instance the other day where I saw somebody, they recognized me, and I'm like, I don't remember you, my guy, but I'm gonna dap you up and I'm gonna make you feel like I actually remember you, but I don't know you, man. But I appreciate the love.
You just ran into somebody you just did not remember at all. Like,
it was at the spring game, man. Like it was like right before the game was about to start. I think he might work with like Ohio State's like athletic department or something. And like the players walked out and stuff, and he saw me. He walked over to me. I thought he was looking at somebody else, but then he was like reaching to dap me up. I'm like, okay. So I dapped him up. I'm like, what's up, my guy? Did not know. I like don't really remember him. I'm just very bad with like names and faces. I'm just like I'm very bad with that. So it's more of a me problem.
I do feel like that sometimes.
Yeah, I'll be feeling so bad too because I'm like, damn. I hate that, man. For moderately watching this game, how did Davion Mitchell minutes, and I like it.
Yeah, it seems like it, which is nice to see. Good for them defensively, which is good.
Malik Monk
should allow Fox to have a little bit more energy offensively as well, which they'll need at points.
Right.
De'Aaron Fox clutch minutes as well, back as usual. He's up to scoring down the stretch. Malik Monk, though, biggest other guy again. He's there. Kentucky boys stand up.
Kentucky legends, man.
We're very much including Trey Lyles as part of that as well for as well as he's played.
Trey Lyles, a little Kentucky man. Okay, Dev, I see you.
Studying,
man.
Whoa, crazy cool, bro.
Oh, shit, Clay getting hot down the stretch.
Yeah, it's a Kentucky guy. Don't give me too much credit.
Maybe I should just quiz you on all Canadian players.
Yeah, it might be a little bit better there, but even then, that might be a little bit shaky.
You know where Dwight Powell went to college?
Not really. If I had to guess, I'd say Gonzaga, but that's a very poor guess.
It's not really a terrible guess. Not a terrible guess. If you know where the Lopez brothers went, you should know where this school is.
Oh, that should help me, but it doesn't. Dwight Powell.
Did you go to the same school as the Lopez brothers?
Yeah.
I think I know what school they went to. I'm not gonna guess it though. I'm gonna let him.
More like probably a school more known for like their brains, man. They're more intelligent guys. Used to have a really good football program. West Coast. That's why Gonzaga was not a bad guess. Oh, I just need one more point from De'Aaron to hit my parlay, bro. Come on.
Stanford?
Great guess, man. Great guess. Good pull. Yeah, Dwight Powell's a Stanford guy. I don't remember him playing basketball there, but I guess that's where he went.
That's good church. Keep the church, man. Great play by Sabonis.
Trying to think other Canadian guys. I'm sure you know Kelly Olynyk. I'm sure you know where he went.
Yeah, Olynyk was Gonzaga, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Dylan Brooks.
Oregon?
Yes, Dylan Brooks with the Oregon. Damn, I'm trying to think Canadian guys. You know where Shea went, right?
Shea was Kentucky?
Yep, Shea was Kentucky. Jamal Murray.
Is he also Kentucky?
He was also Kentucky.
Okay. I always get him confused with way too many schools for some reason.
Yep, Jamal Murray is also Kentucky. I'm trying to think other Canadian guys. Lou Dort. He's Canadian, right?
Yeah, he's Canadian. I have no idea what school he went to, though.
Oh, same school. There's a reason why he was so locked down in that bubble series, Devin. Similar history.
If you know where Harden went to school, you should know where Lou Dort went.
Oh, I should know that too.
Yeah,
I would have knew that. I would have knew that when I was studying for Jeopardy, but I don't remember now.
Harden was coming there in the summer, man, for them summer practices.
Yeah, this is a very tough school to even try and Pac-12 school. Pac-12 school. Their state has multiple teams in the Pac-12.
Their state also has a contender.
Yes, also have an NBA contender that we consider contenders. James Harden is the only guy that I can remember that went to school there.
Yeah, I might just be blanking on that one.
Their mascot is the Sun Devils, if that helps.
Come on, Devin. They're in the draft pick sweepstakes, man. Come on.
Oh, is this it's not Arizona, is it?
Very close. Very close.
AZ State.
Extremely
State,
close.
Yeah.
Arizona State.
Yeah.
Lou Dort, the point guard in college. Damn, what other Canadian players can I think of?
What school Corey Joseph go to, man?
I don't even know if I know where Corey Joseph went.
Oh, I know this, but I don't remember now. I should know this though. I should know Cujo.
Do you know it, Gabe? Oh no, I know it.
I forget if he was a Cali or a Florida, but he was one of the two, I think. And if it's not that, well, then I just have no idea.
Was it Texas?
Yes.
It was
same
Texas.
school.
Okay.
Same school as the guy from the song.
Yeah, I'm like,
right.
I don't know why. He just screams mid-major guy to me. I don't know why. He just screams mid-major, so Texas just seems weird.
He definitely doesn't scream Texas. Mostly because he's not 6'10" or above.
I guess he does, though, when you kind of think of Texas point guards like DJ Augustine,
Yeah, that's
kind
true.
of similar. Maybe it's because they're both light skins. I don't know.
I feel like any Canadian down in Texas just not something I would think of.
Right.
Not the typical location of Canadians that go to the States.
Surely he knows what school RJ Barrett went to.
Yeah, well, that's an easy one. It's Duke.
Wiggins.
Wiggins is Kansas.
I forgot RJ's
Okay,
name.
okay.
Kim Birch.
Oh, no shot.
I don't even know where he went.
No shot.
You got
He
Steve
seemed like-
Nash in you?
I actually have no idea.
Steve Nash is actually tough if you just don't know it. Like you'll probably hear it and be like, "That's a Division I school." Ooh, Davion Mitchell dagger.
Yeah, that was a big shot. For some reason, I feel like it's Santa Clara, but I have no basis for that.
Great pull.
That's egregious. I wouldn't have guessed that if you gave me 100 guesses.
Bro, I need De'Aaron Fox to get one more point. Get back, Fox. No, get it back.
That is a crazy shot, Curry. Oh my god. That is a wild shot. That's actually a game throwing shot.
He's not gonna get this last point, is he?
He might.
They might start fouling.
Or not.
Oh, I should have had him for 20, man. Fuck. Wow, not fouling in this situation? That's crazy. Oh, yeah. Legs cooked, man. I'm sorry.
You know what Clay's going to do after the game, man? Four fingers, man.
If he does that, he's
Four
egregious.
fingers, dude. Come on, man.
If he does that, he's crazy. What'd they stop the game for?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I ran out of Canadian basketball players I can think of.
Yeah. There's a couple others that I'm forgetting about.
Chris Boucher, Slim Duck himself.
Boucher. That's another Oregon Duck, right?
Yeah.
Slim Duck was a duck, man.
Yeah.
Chris Boucher.
No, there's a couple others, but can't think of them.
Was this guy Canadian? I don't even know if he played in the NBA. But Kevin Pangos, was he Canadian?
Don't think so, but he might have been. Oh yeah, he is. Right, he is. Yeah,
Actually, I think he did. I think he played for the Cavs.
yeah. He got signed by the Cavs last year.
Okay, yeah. I remember him from, I think he was on Kelly Olynyk's team at Gonzaga. Like, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Man.
I gotta look up a list. There's gotta be other Canadian guys that I'm forgetting. I know there's a couple guys in the league this year for sure that I'm forgetting. Not saying they're playing much, but
Not fouling is crazy. I can't
oh, Nikhil Alexander-Walker's another one.
believe
I don't know where he went to school though.
Let's see. ACC school.
O'Shea Brissett's the other one, right? And Brendan Clark. Yeah. I was forgetting a few guys.
O'Shea Brissett also went to an ACC school.
Brandon Clark was Zaga.
Yeah. O'Shea's is probably easier. He went to the same school as Melo. I think. Hold on, I think.
Caleb Houston's Canadian as well, right? Kevin Gailey's Canadian. AJ Lawson's Canadian.
Yes, O'Shea Brissett went to the
Ben
same.
Matherin is the obvious one. Andrew
AC
Newhart
legend,
as well,
Ben
right? I forgot a lot of guys here. Yikes. I need to sharpen my
Canada's a lot
brain.
of-
Shaden Sharp as well. We got a lot of dudes now.
Dang, what is it with Canadian stars and going through Kentucky, man?
Yeah, it's just where all the guards go. It's not a uniquely Canadian thing. quite a few Kentuckys, got a couple of Oregons.
A few Oregon guys, yeah.
Boucher and Brooks. Tristan Thompson, I guess technically too, if you want to count him in the league. He's employed.
I don't believe De'Aaron, man.
Keep a job, man. Keep a job.
Why does this Wikipedia page have Chris Boucher listed as a 2-time NBA champion?
I think he got
because he was with the
Warriors.
Warriors. Yeah. Forgot about that stint.
Sack up 2-0, man. We love to see it.
I can't believe De'Aaron, bro. I can't believe that.
We can't be having reasons to dislike De'Aaron now. Come on.
I love De'Aaron, man, but damn, 1 point.
That's tough. That is tough. Thankfully, I just pushed instead of lost tonight, so I don't get to be mad at Harden for having a bad game tonight.
De'Aaron.
Although it's really too bad that I couldn't cash on a parlay that had Cam Johnson because that was so free. Huh?
Well, Kings up 2-0, though. I'll take that.
Kings up 2-0 is definitely nice to see. Davion getting 28 minutes in a playoff game is not what I was expecting, but I definitely like to see it, especially in this matchup.
A good start to the first couple of games of the playoffs, man. Very exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's been a very good postseason so far for sure. That's why I was so surprised / annoyed that half of the conversations this morning were about charges because it's like, well, there was a couple of blowouts, but like for the first round of the playoffs, I thought it was a pretty darn good first weekend. And all I see when I open up Twitter is charges should be banned, charges shouldn't exist, and these plays are dirty. And it's like, really? That's what we're talking about? But no, it's been a very good start, and the Kings definitely deserve to be up 2-0. They've played 2 very good games at home, and those fans are going to be pretty darn happy, and deservedly so. These guys have gone through a lot of pain to get to where they're at.
Steph Curry has never trailed 2-0 in a playoff series until tonight.
Let the Sacramento Kings finally set some history in a positive light. That's what we
De'Aaron Fox better. De'Aaron Fox better, man.
De'Aaron Fox, number 1 on the top 10 point guards list this summer.
Oh, hey, man. Don't let me get my pencil out.
Cookie squads, man.
And those lists are going to be tough to make.
Man. Hey, man, you guys know that I'm the guy who values what you do in the playoffs more than most. So the fact that Dame and Luka are not playing in the postseason, I don't know, man. De'Aaron Fox is really showing out right now.
Well, at this point, Steph got just as many wins in the postseason as Dame and Luka.
You know,
not wrong.
That's actually
wrong.
accurate. That's accurate because he did not play in the play-in.
Man, Fox and the Kings are going to have to do some ridiculous stuff if he's getting in that conversation, though. That'd be a bit crazy.
Oh yeah, they need like a conference finals push at least.
Yeah.
If they had a conference finals push, then like lost in 6, like I'd be like, okay, he might be like a top 4 point guard.
Yeah, I think for me right now, he's like very comfortably number 6, and there's no one below him that I think is catching him, but I don't think he's pushing top 5 right now either. That's probably the only part of my point guards list I feel confident in, but I think he's very, very confidently number 6. Which is crazy that he's number 6 for as good as he's been, but there's so much talent at that position.
Too much. Damn, De'Aaron. 1 point.
This guy cannot get over it.
Yeah, he's just gonna sleep in pain tonight, man.
I might just need one bucket.
Crying himself to sleep.
One bucket, man. One bucket.
According to Super Mario Hoops, fun fact, no team has ever won a championship after losing their first 2 playoff games.
Warriors
Even
funeral, man. I'm here
choking Raptors only lost 1 to start their run. So
I'm here for the Warriors.
Kings in 5 is definitely looking like it's got some potential.
Yes, sir.
Well, considering I have an exam tomorrow afternoon and some studying to do, I should probably wrap this up and
That sounds good to me, man.
do some studying / get some sleep. Now, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of 3 Point Weekly. Be sure to let us know in the comments down below your thoughts on the start of these playoff series. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode. If you did enjoy, then be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more content throughout the playoffs. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Wow, the first